In the next 3 years, Mr. Varian tried to help him achieve the fusion of bones and muscles with mana. This process was extremely painful. He thought the boy would be exhausted, but no, it wasn't enough to drain his energy. This made Mr. Varian very surprised and delighted. After examining his body, Mr. Varian asked if he was ready. The boy lay still with his hand on his forehead, happily replying that he was ready. He believed that everyone could keep the secret, even if he left. Today, like every other day, when he was sound asleep, Tessia appeared. She quietly reached out and grabbed Althal's foot, making him startle. She announced that if he continued to sleep, they would be late. Tessia then used mana to twist Althal's ankle, causing him pain. He complained, asking if she could find a gentler way to wake him up. In response to his question, Tessia calmly replied that it wasn't her fault since he didn't wake up when she was still being nice to him. Besides, Tessia said that he should be grateful to be woken up every morning by a cute girl like her. Seeing her haughty face, Althal scoffed, not agreeing. He sat up, tilting his head to one side, and remarked, making her furious, that there were many servants here, and she didn't need to come to his bed every morning to drag him up like this. Of course, Tessia was not happy with what he said. On their way, Tessia frequently asked him if he thought the servant they had just met was very beautiful. Before Althal could answer, Mr. Varian's voice rang out. He complained that he had been waiting for them for too long, and reminded them that they both should be ready for their upcoming lesson. While Tessia lay exhausted on the grass, Althal answered Mr. Varian's question about the knowledge he had learned over time regarding the types of mana and the characteristics of the 3 races, dwarves, elves, and humans. From this, we know that in this world, there are 4 basic elements and higher-level elements, such as ice, gravity, light, and sound. These high-level elements can only be achieved when a mage has mastered their fundamental element, and they call this Devilon. Among all the races, dwarves can only manipulate earth and fire, or just one of these 2 elements. Similar to elves, dwarves have a much higher affinity for these 2 elements. Their distinct feature is that all dwarves can forge and bend metal. While talented dwarves can control fire and earth at a high level to the point where they can combine elements and manipulate magic, elves are limited to water, wind, and earth elements, but have higher compatibility than humans. In rare cases, elves can also create special Devilon capable of controlling plants. However, elves cannot train mages who can control high-level forms of water, wind, and earth. Human mages possess the ability to control any of the 4 basic elements and are the only race capable of producing rule breakers in any element. Along with anomalies that cannot be classified into any element, such as emitters and healers, there exists a delicate balance of power between the 3 races, dwarves, elves, and humans. His explanation made Mr. Varian very satisfied. Tessia raised her hand, wanting him to answer a question. She knew that the whole assimilation process was to prepare for dealing with the beast inside Althal. However, wouldn't it be better if Althal trained his body while using magic, like she did? Althal had already learned all the basic information about the 3 races in previous lessons, but the racial differences became more apparent as he studied over the past 3 years. If humans awakening in their later years are considered talented, then elf children awaken at the age of 10, with Tessia awakening a year earlier at 9. While Althal was lost in thought, Mr. Varian, after listening to Tessia's question with a humorous face, sat down and asked her if she was angry, because she was the only one being beaten during training. Tessia dejectedly admitted this, saying she got beaten every day while Althal was fine. This hurt her little heart a bit. At least if they shared the hardship, he should be beaten like her. But only she was beaten by her grandfather every day. Althal noticed that Tessia had been trained in her mage skills with a tutor while learning to fight from Mr. Varian, and she would become a monster in the future. However, Althal thought he shouldn't say that to her. Of course, no beautiful girl would want to be considered a monster, especially a delicate girl like Tessia. Mr. Varian explained that what Althal had been doing for the past 3 years was essentially fusing his bones, muscles, and internal organs with his mana. Since Althal hadn't undergone physical training like Tessia, Mr. Varian assured him that after the training process was complete, his body would be stronger and more resilient than that of a veteran warrior like Tessia. Tessia was very surprised. She turned to look at Althal with a sly gaze and asked if that was the reason why he was so sensitive when she woke him up every day using mana, causing him to scream in pain. Teasingly, she said he should know she still feels sorry for the times she twisted his leg with mana to wake him up until now. Mr. Varian felt that Althal was ready for a new exercise. Starting today, Althal would become a true beast tamer. But this wouldn't be like the fortunate adventurers who simply used their beasts as tools. Mr. Sylvian would give him a special exercise. He would ignite Althal's mana core by inserting a portion of his own mana into it. Althal would feel a bit hot, but would be fine. After speaking, Mr. Sylvian placed his hand on Althal's chest and transferred his mana into Althal's mana core. As soon as Mr. Sylvian's mana entered Althal's body, he tensed up in pain. Immediately, the two streams of mana clashed, and Mr. Varian was thrown back. Both Mr. Varian and Althal were astonished by what had just happened. Mr. Varian, still in shock, wondered what the hell was going on. Over there was Althal lying on the ground, his shirt vaporized, revealing his muscular physique. Well, at this moment, no one was admiring his body. Tessia ran over and asked if he was okay. Althal thought he was still okay. Mr. Varian said he knew Althal had a reason for not telling him until now about the beast information and the beast power. Althal replied that the one who gave him the beast power was a dragon. Mr. Varian was speechless with astonishment. He couldn't believe his ears. My God, Althal is a real dragon tamer. Could it be that he had truly trained a dragon tamer? After that incident, Althal needed rest, and Mr. Varian needed to research more thoroughly to devise a better training plan. When Althal opened his eyes, he found himself back in his room. The last image he remembered was Mr. Varian going mad with astonishment when he mentioned Syme and the fact that the one who gave him beast power was a dragon. Althal knew Mr. Varian had many questions for him. Althal said he felt better and believed everyone could keep that secret. Of course, Mr. Varian would ensure this. Mr. Varian informed him that the departure date had just been set. Althal wouldn't have to wait another 2 years but would start his journey in the next 4 months. This surprised Althal, and he threw off his blanket to confirm the information with Mr. Varian. Once again, Mr. Varian explained that a tournament between the youths of the 3 kingdoms was being held, and thus, the portals in Exarus city of Sapin would be open to both the Elena kingdom and the Down kingdom during this time. With this wonderful news, Althal's eyes lit up with excitement, but then he suddenly remembered Tessia. So he would be saying goodbye to her in 4 months. Mr. Varian patted his head and encouraged him, saying they could meet again. He would arrange training sessions for Althal, who now wished the 4 months would pass quickly. Since Althal had completed the assimilation process, the subsequent training would become more challenging. Mr. Varian bid Althal farewell and left the room, advising him to rest and mentally prepare for the upcoming training. In the room, Althal thought about what Mr. Varian had just said. Only 4 months left, and he would be able to return to his family. At that moment, the egg that Mrs. Sylvie had given him emitted a brilliant light. A small cracking sound was heard, indicating that the egg had hatched. Althal had once thought it was a strange rock, but did not expect it to be an egg. As the eggshell broke open, a little black creature emerged. It shook its head and let out a long yawn before collapsing. Althal stood there, stunned by the sight before him. After a moment of astonishment, Althal approached and held the strange creature in his hands. He tilted his head, and it tilted its head in return. Althal asked if it was a dragon, but then realized it couldn't speak. Instead, it responded with a cute Q sound. Althal found the little dragon adorable, but at that moment, it pounced and bit his left arm, leaving a mark where it bit him. Immediately, a voice called out in his head, "Mommy." Althal turned his head, looking around to confirm where the voice was coming from. Then he was surprised to discover that the baby dragon could speak to him in his mind. "Mommy." Althal frowned and told the little dragon that he was male and couldn't be its mother. It would be best to call him father. Despite the little dragon wondering what a father was, Althal decided to name it Sylvie. The little dragon chirped with delight. At this moment, Althal realized that the mark from the bite wasn't simple. It seemed to be a connection between him and tiny Sylvie. The strangest thing seemed to happen to him. At just 8 years old, he had a strange tattoo on his arm, and was soon to become the father of a dragon. He felt his life was full of oddities. Exhausted, Althal hugged the small Sylvie and fell asleep. He hadn't slept long when he was awakened by a scream. Althal jumped up, wondering what in the world was happening now. He couldn't even sleep in peace. It turned out to be little Tessia, with eyes full of admiration, holding Sylvie in her arms and not letting go. It seemed she had been captivated by Sylvie's cuteness. Although looked out the window. It was pitch dark outside. Frustrated and too tired, he wanted to rest. He threw the blanket over himself and shooed Tessia out of the room, telling her she could take Sylvie with her despite Sylvie's protest. After waking up, Altho explained to Tessia that he could communicate with Sylvie through his mind. Tessia felt envious and wished she could do the same. It seemed Sylvie didn't like the way Tessia was looking at it hungrily. It bared its teeth and growled at her with a hostile gaze. Mr. Varian was waiting for the two of them outside the palace. Tessia couldn't contain her excitement and showed off Sylvie to him. As soon as he saw it, he recognized it as a dragon. He was stunned, unable to believe his eyes. Oh my, wasn't the information from yesterday shocking enough? Now there was a dragon beside Althal. He expressed that he felt he might die early if he kept getting shocked like this. After explaining to Elder Varian what had happened and where Sylvie came from, Altho learned that creatures like Sylvie usually only hatch in the presence of their kin. They tried to figure out why Sylvie could hatch in front of Althal. But the only reason they could think of was that Althal had fully activated Sylvie's beast power the previous day. While Mr. Varian trained Tessia in combat, Altho sat cross-legged, practicing with his type of mana. After the training session, Altho asked Mr. Varian if he needed to hide Sylvie when he returned home, since most people wouldn't recognize Sylvie as such a powerful creature. Mr. Varian agreed, suggesting that Altho could pretend Sylvie was just a rare mana beast. However, Mr. Varian believed Althal had more pressing concerns. Over time, he had tried to strengthen Althal's mana core during the assimilation process. Now that Althal was fully alert, Mr. Varian intended to help him train both his core and his new dragon. When Althal asked what he needed to do, Mr. Varian smirked. He believed the best way to approach the initial stage of beast power was to stop strengthening Althal's power and focus on practical combat experience. He tossed a sword to Althal and mentioned that he needed to increase his real-world combat skills. Althal stretched, showing interest. Mr. Varian further explained that Althal would have to fight a beast tamer using these stages against him. This would help Althal learn much more. Before Althal could fully grasp what Mr. Varian was saying, Mr. Varian immediately transformed his body into the possession stage of a beast tamer. In this world, beast tamers were mages who could harness the unique inherited powers of mana beasts. The initial step, called the possession stage, allowed the tamer to borrow the powers of the beasts they controlled. The second stage, integration, was when the mage could fully utilize the abilities and unique traits of the beast. After unlocking the second stage, through decades of understanding the desires of the beast he possessed, Mr. Varian could now wield the deadly power of a shadow leopard. In front of Althal stood a fusion of Mr. Varian and his beast power, a sleek black body with eyes emitting golden light and clawed hands. Mr. Varian warned Althal to stay alert as he sneaked up on him. Although tensed, analyzing Mr. Varian's intentions, could Mr. Varian really sneak up on him, even after warning him? Although strained his eyes to focus on Mr. Varian. In an instant, Mr. Varian's figure disappeared so quickly that Althal couldn't see his movement path. Instantly, a claw landed on his shoulder. He spun around, but it vanished too quickly. All he could utter was this word. As he searched for Mr. Yu's silhouette, he appeared right behind him. He raised his hands in surrender because he couldn't react in time. His speed was at this level. Honestly, if this were truly a battle, he could have killed him. Mr. Varian explained that using this form still consumed relatively little energy. Although he moved incredibly fast, the most critical aspect was that even when he was right behind him, he couldn't sense his presence. Mr. Varian explained that the shadow of the night had the ability to manipulate wind and sound to achieve this effect instinctively. The music played on the sword and signaled that the training session was now officially underway. Days passed faster and faster, and Altho was completely absorbed in training under Varian's guidance and his own abilities. Altho had managed to progress into the early stages of the Dragon Child's desires. Varian had also taught him how to conceal a monster's wrath within his body from the wizards. If not for enhancing his core mana or learning about Sylvie's dragon desires, Altho would have certainly struggled against Varian's rigorous training. Fortunately, the synchronization process allowed his body to adapt to training and regulate his activities every day and in his spare time. Although spent as much time as possible enjoying childhood pleasures, like many other children, just as Mrs. Sylvia wished. Over the past few months, you and Tessia have always been together. Both of you have shared many memories, and today is the day you have to say goodbye to her and start a new journey. Tessia was very sad to hear that you would be leaving earlier than planned. You spent a lot of time comforting and encouraging Tessia before parting ways. You prepared everything you needed for the journey. Mrs. Sylvia's feather that you had left could be used to conceal Sylvie's signature. Mr. Varian patted his shoulder, signaling it was time to depart. Tessia peeked out from behind the curtain, her face filled with distant sorrow as the carriage stood ready. Varian handed him a compass, crafted from the skull of Eric, which would help navigate through the forest. Althal accepted it gratefully and thanked him. Suddenly, Varian leaned in close and whispered that the compass could also help him find another princess, whisking him away before Tessia could pull his beard. Though it was meant in jest, Tessia didn't find it amusing. She looked down sadly as they bid farewell, although reassured her they would meet again soon, hoping by then Tessia would be stronger. She nodded in agreement, although hugged her tightly, promising to remember her and urging Tessia to take care of herself. At that moment, Tessia burst into tears on his shoulder, waving goodbye to everyone. Although boarded the carriage, officially beginning his journey. As soon as he stepped in, a blonde-haired young man taunted him, asking if he had been expelled from the kingdom. Although puzzled by the stranger's curiosity, it quickly enraged him. It turned out this lad was Faerith, whom Althal had knocked out with a single punch when he first arrived. Faerith was visibly angry for not recognizing him and blamed Althal for an unfair victory. According to him, they should have used magic, and he should have been the one to strike first. Althal was surprised by his words, while his companions stifled laughs. It was then that Althal recalled who the blonde-haired young man was, just as he had years ago. He mispronounced his name, causing Faerith to bristle, forcing Althal to apologize and correctly address him. Amid Faerith's protests, Althal unexpectedly grabbed his hand in a friendly greeting and apologized for bullying him before. People say that was indeed right. A smiling face watched over him. Instead of being defiant, Faerith breathed a sigh of relief, bowing his head in acceptance of Althal's apology. It almost looked like a confession of love, so cute and lovely. The girl with purple hair whispered that he could call him Feifei as a nickname, which they did. The remaining green-haired boy also agreed. Feifei blushed and scolded her for revealing his nickname to Althal, but laughed along with everyone else. After a long journey, the four of them arrived at the teleportation gate, which was also where his parents lived. Cyrus, the bustling city, seemed grand with its massive architecture and bustling marketplaces. Althal stepped towards a building, climbing each step with nervous anticipation. He was about to reunite with his family after many years apart. Memories flooded his mind from those years past, and all the hardships seemed worth it now. Although hesitantly knocked on the door, a young girl's voice answered from inside, surprising him. However, when the door opened, it was an elderly maid who greeted him, asking how she could help. Althal awkwardly introduced himself to the maid, who perked up upon hearing his name. From behind the maid's skirt, a little girl peeked out, calling out to a woman's voice in the distance. It was none other than his mother. The sight of her and the little girl, surely his sister, overwhelmed him. The maid began preparing to scold him, but the little girl hesitated and dropped what she was holding, unable to believe her eyes. Was this really her son? Her tears welled up as Althal smiled and greeted her, confirming that he had returned. His mother rushed over, embracing him tightly, tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks. They held each other close, and seeing her mother cry, the little sister also began to cry. Soon after, Reinhold, his father, ran over and embraced them all. The whole family held each other, crying tears of joy. It was a deeply touching scene, enough to make anyone shed tears. After a touching moment, the family exchanged inquiries. Alice asked about Althal's health, expressing concern over his thin appearance, although reassured and updated them that he was now in good health. His father comforted his mother, advising her not to worry excessively, as Althal had grown stronger than before. Alice nodded in agreement, glancing towards the opposite seat, and called for the little girl to quickly come and greet Althal. The girl hesitated upon realizing that this young man was stealing her parents' attention again, but she recognized him as her older brother and eagerly approached, climbing onto the seat with some hesitation to get closer to everyone. Alice affirmed once more that he was indeed the older brother from the stories their parents had told her before bedtime. The girl shyly greeted Althal, sitting down and taking her hand. He was truly happy to finally meet his little sister. Alice leaned her head against her husband's shoulder, smiling happily at the two siblings. After settling down, Althal explained everything from the beginning. Though he decided to skip the part about Sylvia, he explained that he had escaped the fall by luck and had unconsciously used magic to protect himself. Although continued with the story of finding Tessia and spending time in the kingdom of love, recuperating his health. His father was curious about Sylvia sitting on his head, although explained that while he was exploring, he stumbled upon a sanctuary of a beast where Sylvia's mother was slowly dying from severe injuries. He couldn't save Sylvia's mother, so he took care of her until now. His mother still couldn't rest assured, confirming again that he was really healthy and not likely to get sick again, although smiled and waved his hand, saying that she didn't have to worry anymore. His health was really stable. Unexpectedly, his father, excited, stood up, his face enthusiastic. Perhaps he wanted to immediately check how capable Althal was after all these years. Immediately, his wife scolded him severely on the head, turned away, and teased him, saying that wanting to compare true strength had something wrong with it. He boasted to Althal that after coming here, he had become the guide for the protection of the house. Helsti, although used a facial mirror to ask his father about Reinald's core development stage, proud to show that he had made a breakthrough 2 years ago and entered the perception stage. It's easy to see the joy in Reinald's face, but Althal doesn't think he could go to the next stage so hard. After a moment of excitement, Reinald heard Althal announce that his mana core had shifted to the red phase. He was so surprised that he cursed in shock. Alice was very annoyed and struggling to contain her anger at Reinald's habitual vulgar language. Reinald quickly bent down, scolded by his wife to forget the words he had just spoken, and then turned to Althal to confirm what he had just heard. Was it really red? Goodness gracious, he was less than his 8-year-old son at this point. He probably even admitted what ADM said when he was a monster, not just a genius anymore. He stood up, eager to have a match with Althal right away to verify what he had just heard. Alice held her head in exasperation at her husband's outburst, while Althal chuckled with folded arms, feeling really good to be home with the whole family together. As they were all uniting, a man burst through the door, with his wife and daughter trailing behind him, evidently having rushed over. Althal recognized them as the people who had been caring for and helping him during this time. Reinald introduced everyone to each other, and through this, Althal learned that he was Vincent, the auction house manager at Helsti, and also Reinald's former employer. They were at Vincent's home. Althal bowed respectfully, expressing his joy at meeting Vincent's family and apologizing for his sudden appearance. Vincent was pleasantly surprised by Althal, noting how mature and grown-up he had become compared to the foolish young man he remembered. Althal chuckled good-naturedly, admitting he had heard that question many times before, which made everyone around laugh heartily. Vincent's wife introduced Althal to their daughter, Lilia, hoping they could become good friends. Although warmly waved and greeted Lilia, much like he had done with Tessia. Lilia's heart melted when she saw Sylvia and hoped Althal would let her touch Sylvia. Meanwhile, Reinald mentioned that he and his son were preparing to go outside for a few matches, surprising Vincent. He thought it was just a joke, but seeing the two of them ready to spar was completely convincing. It was beyond belief that they would show their endless love for each other by fighting like this after so many years of meeting each other for the first time. While the two mothers laughed and chatted, Lilia and her younger brother played together. Reinald hoped that Althal was ready because he had become much stronger than before. Gripping Althal's hand tightly, he took a ready stance and told him to be careful as well, because he too had become much stronger. Vincent, sitting next to the two women, asked Alice about her husband and whether he was joking about Althal's magic core being light red. Alice, though equally surprised, admitted it was true, and that Althal constantly developed and surprised everyone around him. Despite this, Vincent found it hard to believe. How could he believe that an 8-year-old boy not only awakened but also surpassed 3 stages, while even the prodigies admitted into the Exurus Academy had not reached the dark red stage by the age of 11 or 12, let alone Althal at just 8? It was unbelievable. Hearing this from a distance, Althal sighed. He guessed that he shouldn't have told them that he was only at the light red stage because he couldn't train his magic core and beast taming simultaneously. Ignoring the side conversations, He focused on Reynold and the impending battle. Without a word, he dashed towards Reynold, leaving only a black streak behind. His speed was incredible. He swung his fist, and naturally, his father blocked it. Reynold thought Althal had more in store and hadn't finished his sentence when he was hit with a kick to his left arm, followed by an elbow to his right side. All the moves happened swiftly. Reynold grabbed Althal's left hand and threw him far away. Althal quickly grabbed Reynold's shirt, stepped on his left leg, then bent down and flipped Reynold over his shoulder in surprise. Althal then turned and asked how his father assessed his abilities. Reynold got up after the attack, waved his hand, and praised Althal for his impressive moves. He admitted that Althal had made him unable to defend himself, but now he was going to get serious. Upon finishing his words, Reynold focused, channeling mana throughout his body, and warned Althal to be careful as he prepared to unleash new techniques. Althal looked at Reynold, understanding that in this world, wizards had an innate advantage in sensing and utilizing elements they perceived. In the School of Enhancement, their sensitivity to elements was more refined, and the true manifestation of these elements only occurred after reaching a certain threshold. For Reynold, he had to endure battles and intense training from a young age without any formal education. It wasn't until he reached the Orange Core stage that he could transform his mana into the flames he now wielded. Responding, Althal said that he too had learned a few tricks and hoped Reynold wouldn't be too surprised. Concentrating, he spread mana throughout his body. Everyone was surprised to realize that Althal was a Devon. Without giving Reynold time to react, Althal sprang forward and launched his attack. He moved quickly, delivering a flurry of strikes that left Reynold with no choice but to defend with his mana. Their clash created a loud explosion that frightened those around them. Reynold broke free from the attacks and countered with a strike towards Althal, who easily dodged it. Reynold then began to attack faster, as Althal had anticipated, and his punches grew sharper. Althal noticed that Reynold was using his reach to keep him at bay. He received a punch on his left cheek, but laughed with excitement. Quickly altering his movement trajectory, he ducked low and approached Reynold from below, landing an uppercut on his chin. The crowd gasped as Reynold took the hit. Reynold then embraced his son and praised him. He acknowledged that through rigorous training, Althal's greatest success was mastering Devon. Despite his previous struggles with sound and gravity magic, he was now delighted to show off his Devon abilities to his parents. Reynold excitedly asked Althal when he had learned Devon, how he had learned it, and if he knew anything else. In his father's arms, Althal admitted that he had only recently learned Devon and that he didn't know anything else yet. From afar, Ellie ran over to check on Reynold, while Ellie followed closely behind, worried she might fall. Everyone noticed how extraordinary Althal was, especially Vincent. He was so astonished that he needed to take some medication to calm down after witnessing the events. After the match, everyone gathered in the garden to eat and drink. In his drunken state, Vincent asked Reynold if he could imagine how formidable Althal's future would be. Reynold, of course, knew. He had known this since Althal awakened at the age of 3. Hearing this, Vincent's family was astonished. Alice recounted how Althal had almost blown up the house during that time. Reynold laughed heartily, pounding the table in delight. Vincent, accepting the incredible truth, jumped up so quickly he knocked off his glasses and suggested enrolling Althal in the Exarus Academy. Reynold asked if Vincent was serious, pointing out that Althal was only 8 years old and that Exarus was the most prestigious magical institution on the planet. He questioned whether they would accept someone so young. Vincent's wife agreed with her husband's perspective, believing that with Althal's talent, it would be worthwhile for the academy to sponsor his education, and there was no need to worry about tuition fees. Alice refused, stating that their family had already received too much help and could not let them pay for Althal's education. Moreover, she thought the academy would not be interested in someone as young as him. Vincent laughed and mentioned that he happened to have business dealings with the famous director of Exarus Academy and could talk to her about admitting Althal. Everyone was so caught up in discussing Althal's talent and drawing future plans suitable for him that they forgot about his feelings. Althal interrupted the conversation, saying that this decision could affect his future and that he wanted to say a few words. He expressed his gratitude for everyone's concern, but mentioned that at the moment he just wanted to spend time with his family before deciding to leave again. He wasn't sure if he truly wanted to study at Iris Academy and needed time to think about it. After confirming that everyone had understood his thoughts, Aldo stood up from the table and excused himself to rest, leaving everyone in silence. Behind him, Lilia watched as he took a wrong turn and humorously pointed out that if he continued that way, he would end up in a wine cellar instead of his room. She then led him to the kitchen. In the kitchen, Aldo met the kind-hearted servants. An older woman with a kind face asked if he was the boy who had burned the grass lawn she had tirelessly trimmed. Aldo quickly apologized, but the man beside her explained that she was just teasing him. They all laughed and chatted together. Aldo observed Lilia and realized that his first impression of her as a quiet, reserved girl might have been wrong. The lively girl in front of him seemed to be her true self. At that moment, Lilia, with a knife and fork in hand and a gleam in her eyes, asked if there was any fatty duck meat left. Instantly, the elderly woman brought her a portion and warned her that her mother might suspect something because she was gaining weight quickly. Embarrassed, Lilia sat up straight, quickly cutting and savoring the meat while repeatedly telling the woman not to inform her mother about her late-night snacks. Everyone smiled at her. Another servant whispered to Aldo that Lilia always came to the kitchen when she felt pressured. Aldo wondered what could be stressing her out, as he felt she had nothing to worry about, especially with such loving parents. The man beside Aldo explained that Vincent's greatest wish was for Lilia to awaken as a wizard, even though neither of her parents were wizards, and Lilia herself wanted to become one. This desire became a source of pressure for her. Listening to everyone, Aldo saw Lilia relieving her stress by eating. He realized that in every era, some people deal with pressure by eating, only to feel more pressured when they gain weight. Reflecting on this, he smiled and told Reinhold not to worry, assuring him that Vincent's family were good people. While Aldo was in a deep sleep, he suddenly felt a tickling sensation on his neck. It turned out that Sylvie was playfully trying to wake him up. Aldo picked Sylvie up and announced that he was awake. Noticing how excited she seemed, he wondered what Tessia was up to, missing the little princess. Suddenly, Aldo smelled an overpowering odor emanating from Sylvie. He decided to take the little one for a bath, realizing that not only did he need a wash, but so did Sylvie. They were both quite stinky, like father like son, both in need of a good cleaning. After some struggle, both Aldo and Sylvie were clean and fragrant, although Sylvie didn't seem to enjoy it as much as Aldo did. Asterisk cock 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 asterisk. The sound of knocking echoed through the room. Someone was at the door. Aldo opened it to find Ellie standing there. He greeted his younger sister cheerfully, while Ellie shyly explained that she had come to wake him up at their mother's request. Aldo knew that his sister was still not used to this new brother she had recently met. He cheerfully asked Ellie to lead him downstairs to see their mother. Delighted, she happily sang as she guided Aldo downstairs. After breakfast, Aldo, his mother, and his sister went for a stroll through the city. He marveled at the various stalls and shops, filled with an array of products. Curious, he approached one shop and peeked inside, wondering what kind of store it was. Inside, there were small spheres called magic beast cores, displayed on shelves, and emitting a distinct mana glow. The shopkeeper explained that these were magical cores extracted from mana beasts to enhance one's strength. However, the effectiveness varied greatly between different cores, and buyers often spent hundreds of gold bars on them, akin to gambling. If lucky, a buyer might acquire a core containing even the will of the mana beast. Aldo exclaimed in surprise, "Oh my God! Hundreds of gold bars for a beast core without knowing its true value." He was even more shocked when Lilia's mother emphasized that sometimes the price could go up to thousands of gold bars, not just hundreds. According to Lilia's mother, the Hellstee auction house, run by Uncle Vincent's family, received a large number of these magical cores, including newborn beast cores. She mentioned that Aldo could see them if he had the chance. Aldo grinned and thanked her for the kind offer. After spending some time shopping together, Alice tugged on Aldo's sleeve, suggesting she take him somewhere she'd wanted to since seeing him at home. It turned out to be a barber shop. Aldo looked at his reflection and realized just how unruly his hair was. The barber, with scissors in hand, was ready to send his hair to the afterlife. Feeling anxious, Aldo glanced back for help from the four women chatting away in their chairs, leaving him to the barber's mercy. Alice commented on how terrible his hair looked and advised him to sit still and let the barber create a suitable style. The barber, holding Althal firmly, promised the ladies he would make Althal shine like a perfect gemstone. Hearing this, Althal felt as if his soul had left his body, internally screaming. Let's hope he ends up with a nice haircut. After a while, Althal emerged, feeling ridiculous, though it seemed only to him. His mother's eyes sparkled as she praised how perfect he looked now. Indeed, Althal looked quite dapper. Ellie chimed in, saying he now truly looked like her big brother. His mother agreed, remarking that he finally looked like a modern man compared to his previous wild appearance. As they left the barber shop and walked across a bridge, Althal noticed commotion below. A group of people was causing trouble. Lilia identified them as students from the SORS Academy, recognizable by their distinctive uniforms, which symbolized their status as students of the academy. Althal leaned on the railing, watching the scene below, thinking they looked like a bunch of bullies. Lilia agreed, mentioning that many of them indeed were troublemakers. She explained that as students of SORS Academy, they were almost regarded as royalty in the area, which often led to such behavior. Seeing Althal and Lilia lingering by the bridge for a while, their mothers turned back curiously. Lilia explained that she and Althal were just talking about school, but at that moment, Althal had already vanished. Looking around, she spotted him moving in a strange, excited manner, almost like a puppy bouncing around. Alice cheerfully remarked to Lilia's mother that although Althal usually seemed calm and mature, he could be quite childlike when something excited him. This playful side of him was endearing. Lilia's mother agreed, expressing that she liked seeing Althal act like a child, especially after witnessing his impressive display of talent the previous night, which still left her in awe. Everyone nodded, recalling the cool and composed image of Althal during his performance. Meanwhile, Althal had found something that piqued his interest, a weapon shop. He entered, touching everything with the enthusiasm of a child. If he had a tail, it would surely be wagging in delight. However, the shopkeeper, noticing his behavior, warned him that the shop was not for children and suggested he leave while they were still polite. The arrogant shopkeeper pointed out that the weapons were dangerous, and not toys like those Althal might have at home. He reached out to grab Althal's shoulder to escort him out, suggesting that a candy shop outside would be more appropriate for him. Before the shopkeeper could lay a hand on him, Althal swiftly brushed his hand away, leaving the man stunned. Althal walked out of the shop in disgust, sarcastically remarking that he knew very well what a sword was and apologized for being in the way. Feeling insulted, the shopkeeper lunged to grab Althal's shoulder, demanding to know whose child he was and why he was so disrespectful. At that moment, Alice's voice rang out, commanding the shopkeeper to remove his hands from Althal. The shopkeeper sneered, his face twisted with malice, and asked if they knew who he was, questioning why they dared speak to him so rudely. As soon as the old man scrutinized the figure opposite, he was deeply perplexed. He recognized the esteemed lady standing awkwardly from the Helstee house. Lilia's mother informed that Althal was the ward of the Helstee family and threatened whether the old man wanted them to revoke his auction rights and the family at the auction room of the lady. Immediately, he knelt down, clasping his hands, pleading for forgiveness, as he did not know Althal was the child of the Helstee house. After that unpleasant incident, Althal and everyone left the weapons store. He thanked Lilia's mother for rescuing him from trouble, but she cheerfully said she worried. Had she arrived a bit later, he might have handled those two already. The mothers chuckled quietly, and Alice agreed with the sentiment. At that moment, they didn't notice the man in black with his head covered nearby. The old man noticed Sylvie. Thus, an eventful day in Exoris City came to an end after considerable sweeping. Upon returning home, as they reached the door, Vincent and Reynolds were waiting in the living room. Vincent greeted everyone cheerfully, while Reynolds seemed rather thoughtful. Vincent told Althal that there was someone he wanted him to meet. Althal's gaze turned towards the opposite side, where a middle-aged woman with gray hair, a petite figure wearing an odd hat, was sitting. She greeted Althal and introduced herself as Goodsky, the current founder and director of SORS Academy. As we know, SORS Academy is an institution praised as the most prestigious place for anyone with the power and desire to become a wizard, provided they have both the lineage and talent. It's renowned for producing celebrated scholars, guild leaders, royal engineers, and military commanders. All influential figures in Althal's world have ties to SORS Academy. This reputation has made it as sturdy and unique as a titan wall among other academies on the planet, with Goodsky standing at its pinnacle as the head. Altho looked up at Goodsky's face directly across from him. Everyone in the room held their breath, watching what would happen next. Goodsky reached out with evident delight at meeting Altho. In Altho's mind, he pondered which appropriate greeting he should choose. Should he kiss her hand or shake hands in this case? After a moment's thought, he extended his hand to shake Goodsky's. He said he was very pleased to meet her. Immediately, Alice's hand reached out, pulling Altho down to kneel, apologizing for her son's rude behavior. She explained that Altho had just returned home and still didn't understand the basic rules. Altho bowed, still unsure of what was happening, just hoping this would end quickly because he hadn't eaten anything for hours. Goodsky extended her hand to signal the two mothers to stand up. She assured them that everything was truly fine, and in fact, she herself was being rude by visiting so late. She glanced towards the seats where Reynold and Vincent were sitting. She further explained that despite the abruptness of this visit, she couldn't refuse Vincent's invitation, given his substantial contributions to Cyrus Academy. Upon hearing this, Vincent scratched his head in embarrassment, joking that he only helped out and didn't intend for his daughter to enroll someday in the future. Hearing her father's words, Lilia's eyes filled with sadness, and she bit her lip, unable to look directly at anyone. Goodsky approached Altho, explaining that she wasn't accustomed to visiting a potential student's home. However, Vincent had piqued her curiosity by repeatedly asserting that an exceptional genius currently resided in his house. Goodsky expressed her desire to go somewhere spacious to see how far Altho's talents could go. Lilia's mother completely agreed, disregarding Altho's protests about being genuinely hungry and wanting to eat dinner before beginning the assessment. However, no one paid attention to his words. Vincent quickly led Goodsky out to the garden, a suitable place for Altho to demonstrate his talents. Altho followed reluctantly, muttering to Sylvie that surely neither he nor Sylvie would get dinner if this assessment wasn't concluded soon. Sylvie anxiously voiced her concern, which caught Goodsky's attention. Goodsky praised Sylvie, noting she was truly an adorable mana familiar. She asked Altho if Sylvie was his father's contracted spirit. Altho calmly replied that Sylvie was his close friend and had only been born a few months ago. Goodsky found this very intriguing, as many nobles in this area contracted mana familiars, but Sylvie looked very unusual. Goodsky had never seen a mana familiar like Sylvie before. Altho explained that Sylvie's mother was a wolf with small wings and scales. Sylvie's mother had died protecting her, and Altho had come across Sylvie when she was just an egg. Altho found it strange but considered himself fortunate for it. Goodsky listened to the explanation, unsure whether to believe what she had just heard. However, she remained silent and accepted it. Just then, Vincent announced they had arrived at a suitable location for this assessment. Goodsky looked at Altho, hoping Vincent hadn't exaggerated when he claimed Altho was in all manner, but had declined to elaborate further. Vincent believed it would be a surprise for Goodsky to witness Altho's talents firsthand. Observing quietly, Goodsky thought about how calm Altho seemed. She wondered if he truly had talent, or if it was just the defiance of a child. Little did she know, Altho was only thinking about dinner at this point. He seemed very hungry. Altho hoped he would get to eat grilled fish soon. Everyone gathered at a distance, eagerly awaiting Altho's performance. Vincent stood by, laughing cheerfully, confident that Goodsky would be surprised when Altho demonstrated his magic tricks with fire and light. He was certain that this time, Altho wouldn't set the grass on fire like last time, as he had prepared after the first mishap. Goodsky asked Altho if he intended to use weapons. Altho coolly replied that since Goodsky didn't seem to have a wand on her belt, he wouldn't use weapons either. Hearing this, Goodsky glanced down at her wand on her belt and smiled, not knowing what to make of it. She said to the others, "What do you think? A headmistress of a major academy using weapons to test an 8-year-old? That would be a bit awkward. So it's understandable that she doesn't use weapons." Unfortunately, deep within the body of the little boy was the soul of a great king from another world. Perhaps because of this, Altho felt it unnecessary to be provoked. "Let's get started then," Goodsky said. Previously, during training with Varian, the energy source, the fire exploded, and the adaptation to the water's resistance were arts. Initially, from Altho's old world that manifested as the elements, as well as the actual world at this peak. Altho closed his eyes and focused his mind. When he opened them, a determined gaze lit up. He applied his techniques, combining Kai and mana. The broken tiles under his feet shattered further. Although stood there, hands plunged into his body pockets, focusing on controlling the blend of mana both inside and outside his body, molding it effectively to his desired outcome. Stepping forward, he planted a foot on the shattered tiles, sending them flying high. Although exuded confidence. Everyone around gasped in amazement, hardly believing their eyes. While being tested on his true abilities, although also wanted to see how Principal Goodsky of Harvest Academy would fare. He leaped up, delivering a kick towards Goodsky, launching a large stone straight at her. As the stone flew closer, just a few millimeters from impact, a yellow mana shield enveloped Goodsky, causing the shattered stone to reverse its trajectory. Although was surprised, he bent down, focusing mana into his hands, propelling himself like a rocket towards Goodsky. Using the force of his mana-infused hands like a pink drill bit, he pierced through the layer of mana surrounding Goodsky. As Altho approached, Goodsky's hand immediately generated mana, colliding with the mana Altho had created, propelling him away. After the collision, Altho concentrated, using wind to orient himself and suspending the stones in midair. He then jumped onto them to prevent himself from being thrown too far. Floating in midair on a rock slab, Altho gritted his teeth, thinking it was really tough. Despite his training exercises with Varian, simultaneously controlling spells of earth and air was still harder than water and fire. Now he needed to focus even more. Once he had stabilized his control of mana, Altho dashed towards Goodsky, who stood firm. Immediately, her hand conjured a whirlwind to hinder his movement. Altho retreated, gripping the ground tightly to avoid being swept away. He looked up and realized that in an instant, Goodsky had already completed her next incantation. Instead of just one whirlwind on her hand, there were now multiple, attacking in rapid succession. Altho pondered his strategy against the whirlwinds. Using his control over wind, he reversed their direction to deflect the swirling attacks. Thinking quickly, he redirected the wind to counter the whirlwinds, making them dissipate around him. His clothes were tattered from the collision. Finally, he managed to neutralize Goodsky's onslaught. Goodsky smiled, praising Altho for his impressive performance, but also critiquing him for being too confident in his abilities, daring to face the elements head-on. However, summarizing his magical performance and combat skills, it was deemed acceptable. She focused mana on her fingertips, informing him that this would be his final test. She advised Altho to consider it a supplementary reward and cautioned him to stay alert. With that, she transmitted this mana stream into Altho, causing him to feel somewhat overwhelmed. Altho clasped his head, shouting out loud. It turned out to be a magical sound. So Goodsky was a sorceress. She turned away, praising Altho exceptionally. She announced to everyone that Altho had passed excellently with his ability to control mana as he demonstrated with the magical elements. She decided she would personally teach him, witnessing her son's performance in controlling the elements. His father was extremely surprised, rushing to ask Altho when he had learned to use air and earth magic like that. Hearing this, Goodsky was surprised, wondering what Reinhold meant by saying that he could also use air and earth. Vincent explained that Altho only learned fire magic yesterday and lightning magic. That's why he brought everyone to this paved courtyard, as a precaution against him burning the grass like in yesterday's match. However, to their surprise, he didn't use fire or lightning magic. Goodsky thought she misheard and quickly confirmed with Vincent. If Altho could indeed control at least 3 elements and function as a sorcerer. Before Vincent could reply, Altho stated he could sense and use 4 elements. Hearing this, Goodsky was emotionally shaken, stepping back in disbelief. Reinhold helped steady her and asked if she was all right. Everyone was astonished by Altho's abilities. Goodsky chuckled happily, overwhelmed by the immense potential he displayed. After everyone calmed down, Altho apologized to his family for keeping secrets from them. His mother advised him not to hide anything else from the family in the future. Hearing his mother's advice, Altho felt a pang in his chest, wishing he could promise her that, but he couldn't. Vincent jumped with joy, and everyone around was proud of him. Goodsky patted his shoulder, seemingly aware that he had many secrets he couldn't share with anyone. Ignoring the others around them, she created a barrier around the two of them and told Altho he could freely speak his secrets without worrying about others overhearing. Altho smiled, realizing that the woman in front of him perhaps understood what he was about to say as if she could see into his thoughts. Although told her that he revealed his true strength to her, because there were two things he needed from her: strength and power. These were what ensured his family's safety. Before he could be strong enough to ensure that on his own, not only did he want to attend her academy, but he also accepted being fostered by her. Haha, Goodsky laughed loudly, saying that even the king and queen of Sapin wouldn't dare impose such one-sided conditions on her. Yet, although wondered if she would consider openly acknowledging a relationship with a green-nosed kid like him. Although grinned, tilting his head as he told her that compared to the king and queen of Sapin, he realized his potential, and he believed she did too. Although felt that his duty in this contract had to wait until he truly joined her academy. Slyly, he let her know he had promised something important regarding living a fulfilled life, and he thought joining the Osiris Academy at a normal age might be better. Oh my, Goodsky exclaimed, realizing there were still 3 more years to go. She wondered what Althal planned to do until then. In his mind, Althal was thinking about future explorations. He turned to look at his parents, still not having told them everything. But he was certain of his desire to become an explorer while waiting to be old enough to join the academy. Immediately after that, although had conversation with his parents about his plan to become an explorer within 3 years, his mother screamed that she would never agree to this. Her son had just returned after they thought he was dead. They hadn't been together for long when he said he wanted to go out into the world again to risk his life on another expedition. No, no, Alice screamed. If you want to go, you have to step over my dead body. Ellie cried out in worry when she saw her mother so angry. His father stood beside them, not knowing what to say. He slowly put his arm around his wife's shoulder, indicating that he wasn't saying he would agree to their son becoming an adventurer. However, he advised her to calm down and listen to their son's full plan. Alice angrily brushed his hand away, questioning how he could say that after all they had been through over the past 4 years. She burst into tears, and Reynold held her in his arms, comforting her. Alal stepped forward, took his mother's hand, and said to her that he didn't intend to leave so soon. In fact, he planned to stay home with them for a few more months. He knew he had just returned, but after staying in the kingdom of El Sano for 3 years, he felt he had missed too much of the world. He wanted to experience the excitement that his mother and father had once experienced when they were adventurers. Alal smiled, took his mother's hand, and Reynold said that he knew where he wanted to go, and when he was young, he was also extremely excited about the adventurous life. But his mother was right. No matter how prepared and ready he was, the life of an adventurer was very dangerous and unpredictable. They were really worried about him. Although hearing this, bowed his head thoughtfully. He didn't know what to do to convince his parents. Suddenly, an idea came to him, and he proposed to his parents that if they were not at ease, could he go with someone else? Someone they trusted to protect and supervise him? Alice began to hesitate. Reynold thought it was a good idea, but couldn't think of anyone who would take on this role. As soon as he said this, his wife angrily grabbed his collar and screamed that she couldn't believe he was even considering it. She wouldn't let him send their son out into that dangerous world for another 3 years. Although noticed the tension, and they all sat down, he lowered his voice and reassured them that he wouldn't be gone for 3 years. He planned to return once a month or frequently cut each mission short. His mother, hearing this, smiled, but it wasn't a reassuring smile. She asked if he was sure about that, and, oh dear, this was probably an image any family had witnessed before. The terrifying face of a mother smiling before her anger burst forth. Although feeling nervous, vigorously nodded to assure his mother. Ellie ran over, clinging to his leg, her eyes brimming with tears. She asked if Alal had to leave. Seeing this, Alal kept reassuring his sister that he would be here, and she would see him often. Alice looked at her 2 children and reminded herself to be serious, not to be swayed by their cuteness. She seemed to relent a little, crossing her arms and closing her eyes, telling him that she was still not convinced, at least not before he answered why he wanted to become an adventurer. Wouldn't it be better for him to go to school before becoming an adventurer? Alal smiled sheepishly, scratching his head, and said that if he went to school now, he would be a bit younger than his classmates, which would prevent him from fitting in and making friends. He didn't like that. Alice was surprised by his answer, suggesting that he didn't need to go to school immediately but could instead help his father. Reynold gently patted her head, reassuring that their son would be fine. Alal thanked his father, knowing that he not only wanted more training but also wanted to fight and test the skills he had learned since coming to this world in a freer, more comfortable environment. He wasn't lying to his mother, It was truly what he wanted. He remembered Sylvia's advice to enjoy life as he wanted. Perhaps after this conversation, his parents had tacitly agreed to his choice of becoming an adventurer for 3 years. The next morning at breakfast, as everyone was enjoying their food and chatting merrily, Mr. Vincent mentioned that Reynolds would be going to the auction house to guide a few new recruits. Despite the disapproving looks from their wives, the two men continued to discuss work, acting like two mischievous children. Lilia shook her head, amused by the childish conversation of the two older men. Although cheerfully asked about everyone's plans for the day, his mother, Lilia, and the mothers planned to run some errands around town to prepare for the upcoming event at the Helsty auction house. They intended to take his sister and Lilia along, and although could join if he wanted. Hearing this, although thanked them, and politely declined. At that moment, Mr. Vincent asked Reynolds about their decision regarding all those desire. Alice announced that they had agreed to let him become an adventurer with a few conditions. First, he would wait until his birthday in 3 months. Second, although had to bring a protector with him at all times while on missions. And third, he had to visit the family at least once every 2 months. Beyond these conditions, they believed although was smart enough to handle everything, or at least that was Reynolds' thought. Mr. Vincent then wondered if all those parents had thought about who would be his bodyguard. In his view, although was already very strong, so he questioned if any bodyguard would be capable of protecting him. At this, everyone burst out laughing. Alice placed 2 plates on her head, pretending to have horns, and showed Reynolds. She quickly told her not to do that. This image made Reynolds think of something. He happily stood up and announced that the Twin Horns team would be returning after their dungeon expedition. He had received a letter from the Adventurers Guild stating that they would return in 2 months, and he would go with Although to meet them. Alice agreed, thinking it was a good idea. Although was overjoyed to hear this from his father. It had been a long time since he last saw the Twin Horns team. He recalled the image of the introverted Jasmine, the giant Uncle Durden, the elegant Angela, the archer Helenson, and the goofy red-haired Adam. He eagerly looked forward to the day of their reunion. While working, Vincent heard a knock on the door and found that it was Although. He assumed that the boy was missing his father and informed him that his father was currently at the auction house. Although smiled and explained that he was actually there to discuss an issue with Vincent. Vincent invited him into the room, curious about what they would talk about. Meanwhile, everyone was busy with their tasks. The women were bustling about, preparing for the upcoming auction event. Alice wondered if what they were making was suitable for the auction house's 10th anniversary celebration. Lilia's mother assured her that it was appropriate, as many noble ladies truly appreciated the household items Alice had made. Alice was surprised and curious about who had seen her creations. Lilia's mother winked playfully and revealed that she had secretly taken some of them from home and used them to decorate the VIP lounge at the auction house. Alice was astonished because she thought they were just cheap decorations she made in her spare time. Thinking about this, she felt quite embarrassed. While the two mothers chatted, their daughters were also nearby. Lilia noticed Ellie pouting and kicking a stone, looking upset. She bent down, poked Ellie's cheek, and asked what was making her angry. Ellie replied that she was unhappy because her brother didn't go shopping with her. Lilia comforted her, pretending to be sad, saying that even though her brother didn't come along, she was there with her. She acted as if she was hurt, implying that Ellie no longer found her important. Seeing this, Ellie quickly explained that Lilia was Lilia and her brother was her brother. Just because she was sad that her brother didn't go shopping with her didn't mean she didn't like Lilia anymore. Noticing how worried Ellie was, Lilia continued to tease her, pretending to be sad and saying that Ellie used to like her the most, but now that her brother was around, how could she forget about her? In the middle of her dramatic act, Lilia received a light smack on the head. It turned out her mother had caught her teasing Ellie. Lilia explained that she was only teasing Ellie because she had been thinking about her brother these past few days. Hearing this, her mother casually remarked that it seemed Ellie wasn't the only one thinking about him, and playfully asked if Lilia might be experiencing her first love. The question from her mother made Lilia blush. She exclaimed, waving her arms towards her mother and retorting that to her. Although was just a peculiar fellow. This was because her mother had once said that children her age couldn't be magicians, and she was still patiently waiting for that to change. When she woke up, she bowed her head shakily and said, "This isn't fair. When Although appears, he's a magician much stronger than adults." She felt sad because she also wanted to become a magician to make her parents happy. The two women looked at each other upon hearing this. Alice approached to comfort her, saying she understood how difficult this must be for her, but she shouldn't compare herself to others. She was certain that from the children at school, they knew her son was completely different. Lilia wondered why, although could be so strong. Did Alice or Reinhold train although, and if so, could they help her? Alice hugged her and said, apart from the sword technique her husband taught although, they couldn't do anything else. The answer surprised Lilia's mother. She knew although was a genius, but something wasn't right. Why weren't Alice and her husband curious? Why didn't they ask him why he became stronger, even though he was lost, and even before the bandit attack? He was good at sword fighting, even though he was only 4 years old. Alice said they were both curious, but she believed although had good reason to hide those things and realized giving although a private space and supporting him until he felt comfortable enough to tell them everything was what they should do as parents, not interrogate him about anything they wondered about. Lilia's mother sighed, accepting that, after all, she was a mother who believed that parents only wanted to bring the best to their children. They didn't notice the dark corner of the city, where a stranger was watching them. After observing, he returned to his place and contacted his comrades, reporting to Lord Sebastian that the Mana monster didn't accompany the women of the Helstia family today, and that there was a sorcerer from the Xeris Academy. Protect them so he doesn't dare follow too closely, and report to his colleagues that there is no need to worry too much because although the owner of the Mana monster will attend the 10th anniversary of the Helstia auction house, and it is a good opportunity for them to act. Then he threw himself into the darkness, returning to Vincent's workspace. Although was sitting across, enjoying the cup of tea. Vincent felt a pressure in his heart, wondering what kind of kid Altho really was at just 8 years old. His presence left Vincent more uneasy than when meeting King Sapin. Are you really the boy I used to know? He pondered. Altho thanked him for the tea and explained abruptly why he had come to bother him. Today, he wanted Vincent to find him a few things. A protective cloak, preferably with padding, a decent sword that fits an 8-year-old's body, and a mask that could disguise his voice. Vincent agreed readily about the cloak, but pointed out that only a skilled sound mage could craft such a mask. He could try, but currently he was quite busy. Deep down, Vincent wondered why he wanted to please Altho, although he felt that Reinhold had helped him a lot since he started working for the auction house. Thanks to Altho's father and the training sessions for the guards, theft and disorder within the auction hall had decreased significantly. However, Altho insisted on expressing his gratitude. He said he wanted to help Ellie awaken through a method he had just discovered, which might also assist Lilia. Surprised, Vincent sought clarification on what Altho had just said. Altho replied confidently that he knew neither Vincent nor his wife were magicians, but he believed he could awaken his daughter as a magician and get her into the Xeris Academy. Back in his room, Altho plunged into training, focusing on controlling mana with his new technique, which required increased deployment time and effort. Reflecting on his previous life as a helpless child seeking vengeance after losing loved ones, in this life, he only wanted to become stronger to protect his family and loved ones, vowing not to walk the path of vengeance again. While Altho was immersed in memories of his past life, Sylvie called out to remind him. It seemed the women had returned from shopping, so Altho quickly changed into different clothes. He carried Sylvie in his arms as he left the room. Upon reaching the foot of the stairs, he encountered his mother with a serious expression. She questioned him about what he had promised Vincent regarding helping Lilia awaken, emphasizing that this was not something to joke about. She couldn't believe he could casually make such promises. In response, Altho confidently asserted that he never joked about such matters. He had made a deal with Vincent, who had agreed. Vincent carried Lilia close to him and affirmed that Altho had indeed said he would show them once everyone returned, advising them to quickly gather in the living room to see if Altho's words were true or just a joke. Once everyone had gathered, Altho instructed Lilia and Ellie to sit back to back with him in between. He hoped the two girls would follow his instructions. First, he taught them a special breathing technique. The girls were curious, thinking everyone breathes every day, so what could be special about it? Altho chuckled at Ellie's innocent response, stating that the way he and Lilia breathed was not as simple as they thought. If they could do it, they would become as strong as him. Altho then demonstrated, closing his eyes and placing his hands on the girls' shoulders. First, they had to inhale very slowly through their noses until they couldn't inhale anymore. Then, While unable to inhale further, they had to open their mouths and try to inhale again once. After that, they had to exhale in small breaths about 15 times. The girls followed these instructions under Alfal's watchful eye, repeating the process several times until they saw bright spots floating in the darkness. The adults watched nervously as Ellie exclaimed happily that she had seen beautiful bright spots, but they disappeared right after. Although explained that it was because she had stopped breathing in the special way. On the other hand, Lilia was anxious because she hadn't seen anything. Although reassured her, noting that her parents were not magicians, so it was understandable that she was slower than Ellie. It seemed the two mothers were extremely anxious. They didn't know what Alfal was doing and whether it was truly beneficial as he claimed. Lilia's mother expressed understanding of Alfal's good intentions and didn't doubt his magical abilities. However, she pointed out that awakening a child into a mage was unprecedented and should happen naturally. Although explained that he was simply helping them awaken, similar to how he had done when he was just 3 years old. He'd assured them not to worry too much, and that everything would become clear after he guided the two girls. He advised them to stay calm and observe. Continuing his focused guidance, Altho instructed Ellie and Lilia to breathe in a specific way, warning them that their bodies might feel warm, but not to worry. He then used his mana to trace small lines along their arms, connecting them to the girls' bodies. Lilia cheered joyfully as she saw bright spots, and Ellie also admired the beautiful lights, although continued to ask the girls to concentrate, urging them to use their thoughts to gather the white spots together. He told Ellie that those lights were her friends and needed to stay together to be happy, encouraging her to help him achieve that. After a while of intense practice, Altho decided to end the exercise, believing they had practiced enough for the day. Lilia's mother hurried over to inquire about Lilia's potential to become a mage, although affirmed that currently she couldn't. But with persistence and his guidance over the years, she could definitely become a mage. Before he could finish, Lilia's mother rushed to hug him, apologizing for doubting him, and thanking him for giving their little daughter an additional opportunity to become a mage. Sitting nearby, Lilia observed the scene, feeling genuinely happy knowing she had a chance to become a mage like her parents dreamed. Looking at her father, she saw tears streaming down his face. The following days for Althal passed smoothly and peacefully. He spent his mornings training and helping Ellie and Lilia get closer to awakening. The meals in the house were filled with laughter and joy, which made him incredibly happy. Despite his constant yearning for power, although ensured he dedicated enough time to everyone, knowing he might not have many opportunities like this in the future. 2 months had passed, and today was the scheduled day for Reinhold to meet with the Two in Horns group. Alice asked her husband if he was eagerly anticipating this day. He replied, nodding towards Althal, stating that it wasn't just him, but Althal was also excited. In the distance, Althal stood nervously and anxiously. Sylvie suddenly jumped onto Althal's shoulder, complaining that she wasn't small enough to keep sitting on his shoulder forever. Finally, the Two in Horns group arrived to greet them. Although received a warm embrace reminiscent of Angela's from before, which left him breathless. The giant uncle, Durden, advised her to calm down. Angela, tears of joy streaming down her face, apologized for being overly emotional, although greeted Durden, noticing how he seemed taller than before. Durden, emotionally moved, patted Alfal's head and praised him for growing so much. ADM, leaning against the wall, complained about how he had thought the group members had grown up and matured, yet now they were crying. His curious gaze turned towards Sylvie. Hellingsan, nearby, lightly kicked ADM's shoulder as a gentle warning that it wasn't something to be concerned about. She expressed her joy at seeing Althal again, noting how much he had grown and how handsome he had become. Adam grumbled if Althal was not supposed to cry. Was he doing something wrong? He believed he had grown up so much that he couldn't cry anymore. But that couldn't possibly be a mistake. Perhaps the most surprising reaction came from Jasmine. She rushed over, embraced Althal tightly, much to the surprise of her colleagues and everyone around. She sobbed profusely, apologizing for not being able to protect him 4 years ago. From afar, Althal's parents were also in tears. Finally, the anniversary celebration at the Helsty auction house arrived. Just before the ceremony began, Vincent asked Reynold once more if he was certain they didn't need a mage inside the auction hall. Reynold replied, mentioning that they had Angela and an unannounced mage stationed around the auction perimeter, with Durden controlling the entrance. This setup was deemed sufficient, as going overboard might give the impression that Helstee was rebellious. Vincent expressed gratitude, acknowledging that Reynolds' team agreeing to bolster security for today's event was appreciated. Reynolds confidently affirmed that their presence would help the security team detect any threats, ensuring the safety of the guests and preventing damage to the auction house. Despite his calm demeanor, Vincent's companion knew he was just joking. However, Vincent had initially thought Reynolds should stick to what he had said, hoping that things wouldn't take a turn for the worse. Vincent then mentioned how Althal wanted a sword before becoming an adventurer. He didn't think someone who fought with a list could teach a boy to use a sword. Reynolds was perplexed, explaining that he had only taught him to use a wooden sword, and everything else, since he was 4 years old, was self-taught. Vincent was surprised that a child at the age of 4 would be so independent and spiritually enlightened. Reynolds explained that Althal had said he could learn on his own, but through each sparring session, he exuded a strange pressure, as if Althal had inner confidence from decades of battle. Vincent was astonished by this revelation, considering Althal was only 8 years old and hadn't even lived for a decade. He suggested that Reynolds might be overestimating him. Reynolds didn't deny that what he said sounded absurd, but during combat, there were times Althal stumbled or hesitated, as if he still wasn't fully accustomed to his own body. Vincent interrupted, suggesting he understood why Reynolds was surprised, but they should stop babbling and go downstairs together. Everyone was likely gathered and waiting for them when both of them appeared at the staircase. Vincent's wife complained that they took too long for grown men, despite being twins. Eventually, Vincent noticed everyone had gathered, looking elegant and beautiful. He scratched his head awkwardly, apologizing for making everyone wear only black and white attire. But as host, he didn't want them to overshadow the guests. Turning to Reynolds' family, he suggested they didn't need to dress in such dark colors. Alice mentioned that they felt comfortable with their current outfits, and wearing overly bright clothes would make them uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Althal, feeling uncomfortable in his current dark attire, couldn't resist thinking how cute he looked. He hoped he would grow up quickly. Vincent clapped to gather everyone's attention and announced they were ready to depart. The horse carriage was waiting outside. Vincent approached Althal, patting his shoulder, and mentioned he heard Lilia was progressing well. Althal happily replied that if she continued at this rate, she would awaken right on time to join the Cyrus Academy when she came of age. Vincent thanked him again, acknowledging he was fulfilling his end of the deal, and although eagerly anticipated seeing the marvelous items at his auction house, everyone moved toward the horse carriage to head to the Helstee auction house. As they rode through the bustling streets of Cyrus inside the carriage, Adam couldn't believe what he had heard about Althal's experiences since his fall 4 years ago. Hellensen reassured him that at least Althal had found a friend, and the experiences he had gone through would bring him invaluable lessons rarely found even among seasoned adventurers or nobles. Althal completely agreed, feeling that his recent experiences were truly special and worth cherishing. Finally, they arrived at the Helstee auction house. 2 guards opened the carriage door to welcome them. Althal curiously stepped out of the carriage, greeted by the sight of a grand building that occupied a large corner in the city. It turned out to be the Helstee auction house, celebrating its founding anniversary today. Both adventurers and nobles were excited to attend this event, not only as a celebration, but also as an opportunity to view and possibly acquire priceless artifacts preserved and protected for this grand occasion. Inside the auction house was a magnificent scene with many mana cores and peculiar items. Although admired the exterior of the building, which was splendid, and the interior was equally impressive. Meanwhile, Vincent cheerfully rallied everyone, declaring today a momentous day. He reminded everyone to stay focused and avoid any mistakes. Reynolds assigned tasks to the security team. Team B was tasked with checking the side doors every half hour before returning to their regular duties. Seeing his father's serious demeanor during work, Althal happily remarked to Hellensen how great it was to see his father in his normal state, which was quite different from his usual youthful behavior. Hellensen agreed that Reynolds' current image was natural, since he was the team leader and had matured significantly over the years. After chatting with Althal, Hellensen bid him goodbye, as she had to join Reynolds immediately. Shortly after, Althal's mother called him over to join her and Vincent inside, while his father would join them later. Beyond the doors lay an incredibly spacious scene, with hundreds of seats for attendees. Final preparations for the auction were underway. At the center of the auction hall on the podium stood the man who was presumably the host of the event. Not only was the lower space vast, accommodating thousands of people, but there were also private rooms on the second floor with various levels of luxury to suit each guest's needs. This impressed Alal greatly, even though he had once been a great king in his past life. Lilia asked Alal about his impressions of her family's auction house. Alal happily replied that he was reconsidering whether this place could be considered a home, as it was truly magnificent and beyond imagination. Lilia and Alice chuckled upon hearing his words, pleased that he liked the place. Lilia cheerfully told Alal that what he had just seen was not everything. He should wait to see the secret rooms upstairs, which would impress him the most. They walked together to the staircase leading to the mysterious room Lilia mentioned. Behind the door was an enormous, luxurious room, where everything was lavishly decorated. Besides seating, there was a private bar serving guests. Most importantly, from here, they could oversee the entire scene below of the auction hall, through glass partitions. Meanwhile, in the auction hall, people began to arrive, dressed in exquisite attire. Curious, the two mothers wondered what the children were up to. Ellie was counting the people entering the hall, but Lilia suggested they join in the applause game instead. Ellie happily agreed, and everyone seemed to be in good spirits. The bustling attendants announced the imminent arrival of VIP guests. People quickly took their positions to welcome these special guests. The gates opened, and a stranger entered, followed by the appearance of King Glader, Queen Chrysilla, Prince Curtis, and Princess Serlin. Everyone in the room kneeled and bowed in respect. King Glader, upon seeing everyone, displayed an arrogant and displeased demeanor at having to share the room with others. Vincent apologized for this and explained that the king had expressed interest in meeting his family several times, so he thought today was a suitable occasion for such an audience. Vincent introduced his wife, daughter, and Althau's family to the king. The king and queen laughed heartily, expressing that if they were Vincent's friends, they were also theirs. Ultimately, everyone was here to celebrate the extraordinary anniversary of this auction house. The queen agreed with this sentiment, advising everyone not to be overly formal and expressing her delight at having more friends. Unexpectedly, Sylvie woke up, drawing everyone's attention. The queen exclaimed in surprise, immediately enchanted by Sylvie's adorable appearance, likening her to an intelligent type of reptilian mana creature but cuter. Althau happily explained that Sylvie was just a young creature, only a few months old. He signaled for Sylvie to greet everyone, and seeing her obedience, the king remarked that Althau was very fortunate, as young mana creatures were typically challenging to tame. Yet Sylvie seemed very obedient to him. Althau explained that he and Sylvie could communicate through thoughts, which was more like mutual consent than simply obedience. Upon hearing this, the man with the covered head expressed surprise and questioned Althau's statement, implying that what he had said meant he was entering into an equal pact with Sylvie. Althau was taken aback by the man's reaction, wondering if he had said something inappropriate. He hesitantly clarified that he wasn't sure about that and believed Sylvie initiated this form of agreement. Upon hearing this, the man quickly rushed over, eager to examine Sylvie more closely. His demeanor surprised everyone. King Glader swiftly intervened, preventing the man from further scrutiny, stating that this wasn't the place for him to study someone else's pet. He reminded the man that he was here on a mission and hoped he would remember his responsibilities. The man knelt down, expressing apologies to the king to ease the tension. After this unpleasant incident, Lilia's mother invited everyone to take their seats as the ceremony was beginning. Althau returned to his seat, glancing back at the man with the covered head. At that moment, he noticed the man's persistent longing gaze towards Sylvie. Surely, the man hadn't given up on his intention to observe Sylvie. The master of ceremony spoke on behalf of the auction house, extending greetings and gratitude to everyone present at the ceremony. Today, everyone would have the opportunity to acquire rare and priceless items. The hall erupted in cheers and applause. Before commencing, the host invited everyone to turn towards the southern stands to welcome the distinguished guests attending the ceremony. Althau applauded along with the host's words. The atmosphere reminded him of his past life when he was a king. Now, no longer a king, he felt small in this body that still belonged to an 8-year-old. He wished he could wake up early. In the VIP room, Althau took advantage of the adults' inattention to sip an alcoholic drink, while watching Lilia and Ellie playfully. He noticed Queen Chrysilla, and Lilia's mother standing in conversation in a corner. Althal observed that under the queen's cloak was a magic wand. He guessed she was a mage, but he couldn't sense any mana from her. Surely, she was concealing something. Perhaps her mana reserves, or maybe she was powerful enough to hide it in a way he couldn't detect. As Althal pondered this, Queen Chrysilla sensed him observing her. She smiled knowingly, making Althal feel embarrassed at being caught secretly watching her. He scratched his cheek, contemplating that although his soul was that of a mature man, he found it intriguing that he had never felt any attraction toward older women, even those of his own age before he died in his previous life. In his mind, images of all the older women he had encountered flashed, realizing they were likely his mother's age, which didn't pique his interest. However, younger girls closer to his current age, like Tessia, Lilia, or the princess, were different. He found them interesting to meet briefly, but he wasn't considering dating anyone yet. He decided he would think about that when he was older, currently lost in thoughts about love. While lost in these contemplations of women and young girls, Vincent approached to announce that a sword was about to be auctioned. He advised Althal to let him know if he was interested so he could secure it. Vincent reassured him not to worry about the price, as he owned this place and could obtain anything for him. As soon as he finished speaking, the audience applauded as the auction host introduced a short sword, forged by a master craftsman and enchanted by a fire element mage. The hilt of the sword was inlaid with a core of thunderbird iron, imbuing it with powerful lightning attributes. With a slight infusion of mana, this exceptional sword could generate an electric field around its blade, enhancing its sharpness, and even producing a numbing effect. The starting bid for this sword was set at 50 gold coins. Just as the auctioneer finished speaking under the auction hall, continuous bidding ensued. 51, 52, 53. Although notice everyone bidding so high, and speculated that this sword must be powerful. In this world, a normal house in Exarus would be worth at least 1 gold coin, and a middle-class family in the countryside could live comfortably on just a few copper coins a day. So setting the starting bid for this sword at 50 gold coins could sustain a normal family for 25 years. It was absurd. Thinking about the amount of money being spent to acquire this sword, Althal guessed it must be exceptionally strong. Vincent noticed Althal's contemplation and asked if he liked it. Despite the sword being quite large compared to him, a sword with elemental abilities wasn't something readily available. However, Althal declined. He knew it was powerful, but it wasn't something he truly needed. He wanted something more ordinary. Vincent agreed with Althal's sentiment. Knowing that Althal could conjure fire without needing this sword, he reassured him not to worry, as this was just the beginning. And even if he didn't find what he wanted now, Vincent could help him find other things later. Althal was relieved to hear this, and asked if Vincent had found the mask he was looking for, his tone changing. Vincent proudly revealed that he had found an enchanted cloak, made from night fox fur, capable of hiding Althal's anger from prying eyes. Knowing it was something he needed and securing it by any means necessary. Althal chuckled at Vincent's words, finding them even better than he had hoped. After speaking, Vincent left, instructing Althal to stay put and not wander off, as his parents would look for Vincent if anything happened. True to Vincent's words, the starting bid of 50 gold coins for that sword was just the beginning. There were many more impressive weapons to come, including thousands of mana cores from Class C to Class A. Even the king had successfully bid for a few items, including a Class A mana core. However, it wasn't until the king received the mana core that he would know if it contained the will of the mana creature within. After observing the auction for a while and wondering when lunch break would arrive, Althal noticed that Sylvie had disappeared. He asked Lilia and Ellie about Sylvie's whereabouts, but the two didn't know much since she had only recently arrived. Althal quickly began searching for Sylvie everywhere, from under chairs to nearby corners. Althal suddenly heard Sylvie's consciousness reaching out to him, a growl. He turned to find the man with the tricorn hat from earlier attempting to grab Sylvie as she stood under the refreshment stand. Sylvie looked frightened, although calmed himself, reminding that the man was a royal mage, and approached Sylvie, calling her to come back to his side. She happily rushed over, hiding behind Althal. The man with the tricorn hat became furious. He slammed his staff onto the ground and called Althal a wild brat unworthy to accompany a mana creature as special as Sylvie. Althal was taken aback by the man's arrogant words and asked again about his intentions. The man stated firmly that Sylvie would belong to him. Although was enraged, he tightly gripped Sylvie's hand and demanded the man repeat what he had just said. Just moments before this altercation, Vincent had left Althal to attentively monitor the ongoing auction below. He felt disheartened knowing Althal wasn't interested in anything there. Just as he had expected, Althal simply wanted a good sword instead of something flashy or powerful. If that was the case, he might find something in the auction house's warehouse. While lost in thought, King Glader tapped Vincent on the shoulder, greeting him and expressing hope that the king had enjoyed the ceremony. King Glader mentioned he didn't know how Vincent managed to secure an A-rank monocore from a silver-furred bear, but was quite satisfied with his purchase. He hoped that inside this monocore lay the intact will of the mana beast. Vincent, pleased with the king's praise, bowed in gratitude, considering this humble event truly worthy due to the king's visit. Suddenly, everyone felt a sense of danger, the space around them enveloped as if by blazing red eyes. Vincent, not being a mage, felt the heavy influence most profoundly, the intense bloodlust nearly suffocating him. He struggled to catch his breath, clutching his chest. The soldiers around panicked, protecting the king and queen. King Glader drew his sword, and the queen wielded her scepter, searching for the perpetrator of this misdeed. However, there was no unfamiliar face in the room. It was then that Althal realized he had lost control when confronting the leader with the tricorn hat. Ellie cried and hugged Vincent's mother tightly. After catching his breath, Vincent was surprised, unsure of what was happening. At that moment, Reynold, Adam, and Helenson burst in, asking about everyone's well-being. The soldiers reported that the room had been checked and they were all safe. They suggested Reynold check the surrounding areas. Reynold commanded Helenson and Adam to go upstairs. Meanwhile, Althal's face turned pale. He silently apologized to his father for causing trouble. Everyone in the room remained calm and focused on their seats. Althal used his mental abilities to exchange thoughts with Sylvie, asking if she was okay. After thorough inspection, the soldiers returned, reporting that they had apprehended an intruder. Upon hearing this, King Glader remained calm, indicating he was already aware and everything was under control. Seeing the king's reaction, Althal was astonished by how gently King Glader handled the situation. In his heart, he silently thanked the unfortunate intruder for inadvertently helping him avert a dangerous situation. Althal clasped his hands together, wishing the intruder a safe journey back to the far reaches. At the same time, the soldiers turned to the leader with the tricorn hat, questioning why a seasoned guard like him had faltered under threat from an intruder. The leader protested, claiming he had slipped. This answer drew mocking laughter, suggesting he might not live long if he kept up such excuses. The leader, furious, turned towards Althal. Knowing Althal had exerted the pressure earlier, he gritted his teeth in annoyance, but remained silent, returning to his position under the stands. Below the stands, the event organizer thanked everyone for their assistance and announced that the auction would continue. The auctioneer mentioned they had one final item for the day, traditionally the best. They unveiled a covered item, and when the cloth was removed, the entire hall saw inside a lion from another world. The host explained to everyone in the auction hall about the classification of this mana creature. Currently, it was just an adult world lion beast, but as it matured, it had the potential to become a Class B mana creature. With careful nurturing, this world lion could even ascend to Class A. Upon hearing the host's introduction, everyone in the auction hall was thoroughly intrigued. In the VIP room, a boss figure stood in the corner, eyes fixed on Althal and Sylvian. He thought Althal was a fool who clearly paid no attention to the mana creature that the auction host had just introduced. Next, the host explained that owning and nurturing this creature could make its owner a legendary beast tamer. He then announced a starting bid of 500 gold. The whole room buzzed with excitement. Everyone put forward their numbers minus 556, 600, 1751. A man in a hat bid 800, and our final boss, the king, bid 1,000 gold. The room fell silent after hearing this figure, with no one daring to bid further. Perhaps no one wanted to compete with their king. Vincent congratulated the king on acquiring the world lion beast, thanking his majesty for his generosity. However, he couldn't help but wonder aloud to the king about his plans for the new royal pet. He asked if the king intended to personally tame it, or if he had other plans for this new addition to the royal family. The king pondered, stroking his chin in thought. Though he desired the covenant beast for himself, he believed he would give it to his son, Curtis, depending largely on the prince's behavior. Prince Curtis was delighted to hear his father speak this way. He stood up, placing his hand over his chest, earnestly promising his father that he would do his best. The queen, in her happiness, couldn't resist teasing her son, reminding him that she wouldn't tolerate hearing any plans to escape his teachers. Prince Curtis blushed and promised not to do so, as he had already made that promise to her. Observing this royal family, Althal was amazed. They seemed just like any other ordinary family. It was quite wonderful, though Althal wondered if this was truly the case, or just a facade hiding truths no one wanted to see. Vincent hinted to the king that the auction was almost over, asking if he wanted him to collect the items and deliver them promptly. The king eagerly agreed, no longer patient to wait but eager to see and touch the things he had purchased firsthand. Sebastian's sudden approach to the king, with whispered words, made Althal uneasy, sensing something ominous about what might unfold next. Vincent brought a large bag for Althal, stating he had prepared everything Althal needed, except for a sword. He suggested Althal inspect the contents to ensure they met his requirements. Alice offered to help manage these items, while Althal selected a sword for himself. The king, surprised to see that Althal could wield a sword, hinted if Althal could spar with his son someday. Upon hearing this, the man in the hat immediately stepped forward to intervene, claiming Althal was just a commoner without the necessary knowledge. He argued that sparring with Althal would spoil the prince. Althal, maintaining his elegant demeanor, smiled and thanked the king for his suggestion, but modestly declined, stating his skills were not proficient and swordplay was merely a hobby. He admitted he lacked talent in this area compared to the king's son. Hearing Althal's response, King Glader smiled warmly, while the man in the hat stood beside him, observing with a studious look. Outside, Reinhold approached as called by Vincent to meet the king. Reinhold greeted the king respectfully and apologized for the recent disturbance. The king praised Reinhold for swiftly identifying the troublemaker and expressed his belief that Vincent had found a valuable ally. Reinhold humbly considered it his duty and felt undeserving of King Glader's praise. Reinhold confirmed that Althal was indeed his son and wondered if King Glader had any issues with this. King Glader explained that the man standing next to him, the head guard of the royal family for many years, had made significant contributions to the nation. Therefore, he felt it appropriate to reward him. Due to his keen interest in Sylvie, King Glader proposed that Althal gift Sylvie to him. This would be an honor for Althal. Althal sensed something was amiss with this situation. How could this man, who had supposedly made great contributions to the royal family and the nation, demand a companion from an 8-year-old boy just because he liked her? Although found the king's request unreasonable, and those around him still couldn't believe what they had just heard. Reinhold looked anxiously at his son, who stood frozen, his eyes darkening. He hesitated, then spoke to the king, expressing his inability to allow his son to proceed with this. King Glader offered to compensate Althal and personally cover the cost of hiring a sorcerer, but Reinhold remained steadfast in his refusal. For him and his wife, this decision couldn't be made unilaterally. Sylvie was a mana creature that Althal had acquired on his own, giving him the sole right to decide its fate. Upon hearing this, King Glader scrutinized Althal once more. Despite the tension, although met the king's gaze without hesitation, his expression serious. Infuriated by what he perceived as arrogance, the king questioned whether Althal had not been taught respect for those of higher rank. King Glader's frustration with Althal's response led him to express discomfort. He glanced at Althal again, sternly raising the issue of whether he could give Sylvie to a prominent figure and offer compensation. A royal sword that any young knight would cut. Althal remained silent, bowing his head in an attempt to maintain composure in the face of the king's irrational demands. Althal sighed, then bowed in gratitude for the generous compensation offer from King Glader, but respectfully declined it. To him, not even the greatest sword could compare to Sylvie. At this point, the other party couldn't keep their composure. He exclaimed, questioning how Althal dared to refuse King Glader's offer. Perhaps sensing that his previous offer was somewhat irrational, King Glader proposed a new arrangement, intending to offer Sylvie to his son in exchange for a New World lion cub. This immediately alarmed Prince Curtis, as his father had once promised to reserve it for him. King Glader argued that this exchange wouldn't disadvantage Alal, despite Sylvie's uniqueness and rarity among mana creatures, which typically grew into formidable predators. Although King Glader explained to Alal that he wouldn't be at a loss in the proposed transaction, Alal remained displeased, making it clear to King Glader that his decision wouldn't change. He wasn't willing to sell or trade his loyal companion for anything. Perhaps Althal's attitude had challenged the king's pride because he had tried to use the gentlest words and the kindest favors just to exchange for a mana monster that did not possess much strength. The master of this monster, Alal, did not understand this. The king sternly asked Alal one last time whether he would give up Sylvia. King Glader's attitude made Shabation delighted. He was certain that Alal would have to agree soon. Alal trembled with anger and asked the king how much he intended to sell his son for. Alal told the king that he had asked him 3 times, and it seemed that his refusal was something the king's pride could not accept. He felt that the king did not understand the importance of Sylvie to him, so he would make it clear to him. Once again, he asked King Glader how much he would accept to sell his own son and daughter. Not only King Glader, but everyone present in the room was stunned in shock. Shabation signaled to another royal guard to advance and attack Alal. The guard channeled mana into his sword, quickly swung it towards Alal, and shouted that Alal was just a commoner, so how could he behave so rudely in front of the king? How dare he have any ill intentions towards the royal family? Alal looked at the guard swinging the sword towards him and saw his move. Perhaps the guard wanted to cut him in half by trying to enhance the sword with mana at that moment. Alal immediately kept the mana in his body circulating smoothly and predicted the guard's movements, controlling his path and attacks. No matter how the guard swung his sword, Alal easily dodged. Alal unbalanced him and swiftly disarmed the guard, then delivered a punch straight to his face. The guard fell backward with a bloody face, probably missing a few teeth after the punch. Seeing the guard unable to defeat, Alal made Shabation furious. He silently cursed the guard for being foolish and unable to handle an 8-year-old child. Then, he used his staff to focus mana and decided to attack Alal. He was determined to obtain Sylvie. He saw that a beast, still young, that could create an equal blood contract at such a young age, meant that Sylvie could grow beyond even rank A. He was resolved to obtain this magical beast. A large amount of pink mana gathered at the top of his staff, ready to launch an attack. But at this moment, everything around seemed to freeze. Only Alal and Shabation could move. As he was still puzzled by the surroundings, Alal spoke, telling him not to try anything. He said that the spells using mana from the environment would not work. Before his eyes was the image of an 8-year-old child with blue flames in his eyes. Shabation, frightened, demanded that Alal step back, nervously saying that Alal did not have the power to fight him, a royal mage. But then his terror grew as Alal instantly appeared beside him, and in a flash, before he could think, Alal had broken his leg. Shabation screamed in pain, clutching his leg and begging for help from those around him. But no one responded. Everyone stood still like lifeless statues. Alal approached him and advised him to listen carefully to what he said. No one would help him. Shabation trembled with fear when Alal placed a hand on his shoulder, his face a mess of tears and snot. He couldn't believe that Alal had the ability to free space, a power that even a royal mage like him couldn't do. He warned Alal not to do anything to him because he was the king's mage guard, as if that would scare Alal. It seemed he was so scared that his mind was no longer logical. Clearly, if Alal were afraid, he would have given the pet to the king from the first mention, rather than the current scene. Seeing that Shabation was now afraid, Alal stood up and gave him a dangerous look, warning him to know his place if he didn't want to die. He mentioned that if it came to that, he wouldn't even see the sunlight again, let alone just having a broken leg like now. In the memory of everyone in the VIP room, the last image they saw was Alal defeating the guard with a punch. When they regained their senses, it seemed as if part of their memory was missing. The sight before them was Shabation sitting and crying for help with his leg broken, and Alal lying there motionless. The children in the room screamed loudly. Reinhold and Ellie were bewildered, and King Glader commanded the guards to quickly help Shabation. The queen urgently requested a healer. Reinhold and his wife quickly approached Alal, checked his heartbeat, and reassured Ellie that he was still alive. Reinhold lifted him up, with Sylvie jumping onto his shoulder. Everyone looked worriedly at Alal's small, motionless body, Alice used her healing power to treat her son, her hands trembling with pain. At this moment, the streets were bustling and crowded with local residents. We chose and stopped at a cafe right on that busy street to chat. A man with a beard spoke up. "So who will it be?" A man with long, dyed red hair holding a spear responded. "Unfortunately, I don't think I can take it. I realize that I have no ability to take care of children. Plus, with my personality, on a fine day, your son might end up killing me." At this point, it seemed like everyone at the table agreed with his statement. That young man voiced his opinion. "Actually, I hope Durden or Helensan will go with Althal. But honestly, we can't offer you much. Alice and I will try our best to do more, and will compensate in every way possible within our ability." "Don't say that, Ray. We are a family. I'd really want to go with Althal to watch the boy grow up day by day," said the man wearing an elegant shirt named Durden. A beautiful, young, and charismatic lady also agreed with Durden and said to Reinhold, "You should know that we are not doing this for money. Moreover, we made a decent amount from the last dungeon." A hand was raised, and someone said, "Let me," surprising everyone who was curious to see whose hand it was, and what would happen to that person. It was none other than the Lady Jasmine. Normally, Jasmine hated escort missions. So why did she agree this time? The girl asked, but logically speaking, Jasmine is the most suitable to protect Althal. Durden is specialized in defense activities within the spell area of a large group. A beautiful girl still didn't believe it and asked Jasmine again to be sure. "Are you sure you want to go?" Jasmine was very confident about this mission. Because of that confidence, the man with long, dyed red hair told everyone to let her take on this mission and reasoned, "She is the only enhancer with elemental sensing among all of us here. She just went through the light orange stage last year, and with that element, isn't she the most suitable?" Reinhold agreed, although he was very sad. He also wanted to go, but just one person was enough. After the conversation, everyone finally agreed and found the most suitable person to protect Althal, and everyone was very happy about it. All good things must come to an end. Everyone stood up and headed home. When Reinhold's family arrived home and just opened the door, the little one angrily shouted, "Sister Lilia, you can't train without me." But for some reason, when the little one said that, the whole family burst into laughter. However, Altho thought that it seemed Lilia had the ability to meditate on her own, even without him channeling mana into her. Ellie would awaken around the age of 8 if she truly meditated, but maybe she shouldn't awaken too early. He didn't like people being too curious about her. From his thoughts, it was clear that he deeply loved and cared for his little sister. He turned to his father. "Oh right, Dad, can I go to the auction house for a while? I want to find a sword because I didn't get anything last time." Hearing this, his father immediately gave permission, and his mother cheerfully reminded him not to stay too long as she would prepare dinner for the family. As soon as they arrived at the auction house, Lilia's parents were still working there, waiting for Althal and his father. After the incident they had gone through, it was the first time he had seen them, and he had to answer a slew of questions about his health. He tried his best to reassure them that he was fine, and was very glad that everything was over. But contrary to his feelings, they thought differently. They weren't satisfied with the king's reaction to the incident. Both fathers speculated that the guards were only temporarily suspended and would return to their positions once things calmed down. Interrupting their thoughts, Altho's father coughed and laughed awkwardly, then said that he came here to find a sword before the test at the Adventurer Guild. Vincent almost forgot. Because of that, it might take a considerable amount of time to find something you like, but feel free to look around. Upon entering, Altho was surprised by the scene before him. It was a vast space with many swords. He was extremely excited and began looking for a suitable sword for himself, but was disappointed that among the many swords, none seemed to be the right one. "That one isn't right, and this one isn't either," he thought. Perhaps it was because there were too many warriors who were enhancers, or there were more two-handed or large swords. After searching for some time, he felt hopeless finding a new reliable sword for his small body. It seemed really difficult. He almost gave up and found some interesting weapons. Feeling a bit foolish, while he was engrossed in trying out different weapons, he looked down and saw a bat squirming under the table. It seemed to have found something. After some wriggling, the bat pulled out something that looked like a stick. Altho said he didn't need it, but the bat insisted he try it. He didn't know what the bat wanted him to do with the stick. When he picked it up, it felt quite heavy, with a good balance for a stick. It was almost like a sword, surprising him. He wondered if he needed to infuse mana to use it. He kept testing his theories by infusing all elements into it, but the sword remained inactive. He stubbornly thought maybe it only reacted to a specific element. He struggled with the sword until he was exhausted, yet it still didn't respond. He wondered if it wasn't a special element. Then what could it be? As he was thinking, he looked at the bandaged wound on his arm. His eyes filled with suspicion. No way, it can't be, he reassured himself. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the sword again. This time, he was able to draw it out. He excitedly swung it a few times, and when he looked down at the translucent blue blade, he couldn't stop thinking about how beautiful it was, despite being just a sword. But both the sheath and the sword were too heavy for him to use properly in his current body. Feeling disappointed, he noticed some wooden crates neatly stacked in a corner. It seemed he had an audacious idea involving those crates. Apologizing to Vincent, he calmly took the sword and slashed at a crate, splitting it in half. After the strike, he looked back at the sword. Near the end of the blade, the words "Dawn's Dance" appeared. He repeated "Dawn's Dance" in astonishment. But for some reason, the sword had injured his palm. Vincent, worried, asked if he was okay, and he assured him he was fine. But why had the sword injured him? What had just happened to him? Ignoring the wound on his hand, he stepped closer and picked up the sword once more. He discovered that the weight imbalance had changed. Seeing this, he bravely continued to swing it a few more times and realized that not only had the balance changed, but the handle and blade length had also shortened to better suit his body. With the privilege of handling the finest weapons, he had held priceless swords for decades. But he had never found a sword that fit him so perfectly. He continued to swing the sword and slashed at another wooden crate. He was surprised to see how clean the cut was, which made him feel happy and excited. Although rare, there are some cases where elemental wizards can create magic staffs that can adapt to a specific user. These weapons would adjust themselves, allowing mana to flow better between the weapon and the user. However, he had never read about a sword that could adjust itself to fit its user. He wondered who had made this sword. Lost in his thoughts, he heard his father calling him from outside the door. "Come on, it's late." Hearing his father's call, he immediately ran towards him. He realized that the sword Sylvie had found for him was indeed the right choice, and seemed perfect. His father asked, "So you found a sword you like, right? It may not be as splendid as the others, but it suits you. Do you feel it after swinging it a few times?" Altho handed the sword to his father, who asked Vincent if it was okay. Vincent explained that the sword had been placed in small auction booths several times, but had never attracted any bids. Hearing this, Reinhold drew the sword and swung it a few times to test its sharpness. When asked how he found the sword, Reinhold replied that the weight adjustment was quite poor because the maker had tried to lighten it. However, for Alal, it seemed to be a good fit. Noticing another staff at Alal's waist, his father asked in surprise, "What's that staff, son?" Even Vincent was surprised by the question. Alal, breaking into a cold sweat, told himself to stay calm. He then replied, "I found it on my way out. It feels quite strong and heavy. I thought it could be useful for training." Vincent sighed, not remembering ever seeing the staff before. "May I take a look at it?" he asked. Alal, feeling shy, reluctantly handed it over. Vincent raised the staff and turned to Vian, asking, "Do you have any records of something like this?" Vian scratched his head and took out a piece of paper to read. "One of our blacksmiths told me a rather strange story," he began. An old man threw the staff at him, mumbling something about no one being worthy. "We had several people inspect it just to be safe, and sir, it's just a solid staff, but quite unusual. Shouldn't we have an elemental wizard examine it?" Hearing this, Alal quickly apologized if it was valuable. He thought it would be quite handy for his training. Vincent, noticing Alal's interest in the staff, said with twinkling eyes, "Oh, there's nothing to apologize for. If it stays here, it will only gather more dust, so go ahead and keep it." Alal was delighted and thanked Vincent. As he walked away feeling pleased, Vincent felt a burst of joy, happy that Alal had called him uncle, and gave a light punch to his chest. Vian looked on in surprise. A few days after acquiring the perfect sword, Alal's birthday arrived. Everyone gathered in a luxurious house, dressed in elegant and noble attire, enhancing their beauty. They all happily celebrated Althal's birthday. Althal thanked everyone for being with him through the past year. His mother couldn't believe that he was already 9 years old, overwhelmed with excitement for the upcoming party. Vian said, "Come on, Alice, it's not time for speeches yet. Let's start the party." And so the party officially began. Many people pushed carts laden with eye-catching dishes, all exuding a rich aroma. Each dish was prepared meticulously. Seeing everyone behaving reservedly and distant, a girl remarked, "This isn't a museum. Come on, everyone, sit down and enjoy the meal." At this point, everyone started to relax and enjoy themselves, eating and chatting merrily. The party was truly lively. "It's your turn, Durden," someone said. "Do you remember the time your pants caught fire and you had to go back to the village with your hand covering your butt?" The comment made Durden blush and cover his face, saying, "Oh, come on, ADM." But another voice chimed in. "Have you forgotten about the time a horn mole popped up while you were using the bathroom in a dungeon? If I recall correctly, you screamed and fell backward, wetting yourself." Hearing this, everyone burst into laughter, while ADM stammered, "I thought everyone was asleep at that time." After everyone finished their meal and ADM had been thoroughly embarrassed, someone suggested, "Is it time for gift giving now?" The first to present their gift were Althal's parents. "Happy birthday again, son. This is a gift your mother and I have painstakingly prepared for you on this special occasion." Ellie quickly raised her hand and added, "And from Ellie too." Althal accepted the gift from his parents, turned to Ellie with a joyful expression, and asked, "Do you want to open it with me?" Ellie eagerly nodded with sparkling eyes and a happy heart. As they opened the gift, Althal was pleasantly surprised. It was something he really liked. Leather from a sharp-nosed buffalo that his father had personally hunted and skinned. His mother had enchanted 3 stones on it, each with a single-use spell. "Each stone holds a small spell that can be used only once, but I thought it would be useful for your missions," she explained. Althal put on the leather and found it to be perfect. He ran to hug his parents, saying, "I love it. Thank you for the gift." Ahem. Next are the gifts from everyone else. Let's see what the next presents will be. I'm so curious. As Althal opened the gift box, he found a pair of rings inside. He knelt down in surprise and exclaimed, "Oh my God." Vincent's actions caused his wife to smack him on the head, saying, "Honey, stop teasing the boy." Vincent, in pain, but still smiling, replied, All right. Doesn't anyone want to watch a bit of drama?" Then he added, "Anyway, this one is for you, and this one is for you, Alice." Althal felt embarrassed because the stone on the ring was even bigger than the one he had given. Vincent's wife explained, "As long as Althal wears this ring, Alice, the stone on your ring will light up if Althal's mana level drops to a dangerous level. Unfortunately, the rings can only do this one thing, but we thought it might give you some peace of mind." The gift from Althal's parents deeply touched Alice, who hugged Vincent's wife tightly and thanked her sincerely. While the two women embraced, Vincent and Althal stood side by side, clearly very happy. However, Althal saw the ring as a double-edged sword. On one hand, it would make his family worry less about him, but on the other hand, his mother would constantly check the ring, worrying that it might light up. Althal was clearly concerned about this. Next, Adam spoke up. "What about us, everyone? Because your son is incredibly strong. We thought similarly to the Hellsteve family. This little monster doesn't need much. We thought your family would appreciate this more." Althal opened the gift and Adam continued, "These are communication scrolls. I won't mention how expensive they are, because they're super expensive. Anyway, with these, you have a one-way communication method that I think goes well with the 2 rings. Just channel some mana into it and record a message. Once your mother receives the message, she can reply once, and after confirming the message has been delivered to Althal, the 2 scrolls will turn to dust." Although the gift seemed a bit extravagant, it was also quite surprising. Tomorrow was an important day. "Son, are you excited? Promise your mother you'll stay safe. I don't care about your ranking or how wealthy you'll become. None of that matters to me. I just want you to be safe." "That's enough for me," she said, gently kissing Althal's forehead. To reassure his parents, Althal replied, "Of course, Mom. Dad, I'll come back whenever I can." As the party ended, everyone went home. They waved goodbye to Althal, hoping for his safety. In the dark of night, lying on his bed, Altho had been feeling like this for a while. But as he prepared to sleep, he realized that now he had a family, people who truly loved and cared for him. This feeling was incredibly precious to him, something he would cherish, fight for if necessary, and strive to become stronger for. It made him feel more than a king. Indeed, family was a sacred bond that made everyone want to protect it with everything they had, and continually strive to become stronger for it. With these thoughts, Altho drifted off to sleep. The next morning dawned beautifully, with the sun's rays streaming in. Altho tried to get Sylvie accustomed to something, but it kept resisting him, asking why he wanted to use mana. Altho accepted and went along with Sylvie's wishes. Altho tightly grabbed Sylvie's tail, pulled it behind him, and tossed it into the sky, causing Sylvie pain and tears, which fell into the bath. Then Altho put on matching clothes, looking extremely handsome. With Sylvie by his side, he stepped out of the house in a cheerful mood, clearly visible on his face. As he descended the stairs, he saw his parents and sister waiting for him. His father approached and said, "Look at you, already acting like a top-tier S-ranked adventurer. I know you're strong, but don't let it make you arrogant. Always remember your limits, and when things get tough, trust Jasmine." Although politely responded, "Yes, father, I won't." Ellie, tearing up, held Altho's hand and said, "Are you really leaving with Sylvie? Why don't you stay?" Ellie's question saddened his mother, who fought back her emotions. She gently said to Ellie, "Sweetheart, Altho and Sylvie will be back soon. But because he loves you, he doesn't want to leave." Ellie persisted, "Can't they stay? I want them to stay." Altho sat down calmly and said to his sister, "I know you've grown up, Ellie. I have an important task for you in my absence. Can you protect Mom and Dad while we're gone?" Ellie hugged Altho tightly, saying, "I've been training a lot, big brother. Now I've gathered many bright spots. I can protect them now." Ellie burst into tears, and Altho hugged her back, feeling he had missed the time when she had grown up. "Now I know that the little time we've had together recently isn't enough. But to protect them, this is the step I have to take." Altho thought the love of his family gave him added strength, making him brave enough to face the challenges ahead. Mother Lilia, also tearful, hugged Altho tightly, saying, "Don't look at me like that. You'll be okay." Although reassured her, "We'll be okay, Mom." Ellie hugged Sylvie and told her not to misbehave. Alice struggled to contain her worries and said a tearful goodbye to Altho, reminding him to wear the ring. Altho smiled warmly, "Of course, Mom." And so he left. As he was about to open the door, he heard someone call, "Altho, we'll always support you." Altho smiled and stepped outside. He saw his parents' friend and the car waiting for him as planned. She asked if he was ready, and as expected, Altho had mentally prepared himself. He put on his mask and walked away. After a fairly long journey, they arrived at their destination, where many people had already gathered. As they passed by a man, Altho overheard him looking for a minimum grade C fire-type mage. Suddenly, Sylvie exclaimed, "What's it doing?" Another woman was surprised and said, "Your familiar's contract seems different." Altho explained that he had just discovered that it could change its form a bit, like turning into a small black lizard to look less attractive. The woman chuckled at Altho's explanation, then called out to the next person, welcoming them to the Cyrus Adventurers Guild. "How may I assist you?" she asked. "We're here for a sponsorship exam," Altho replied. The girl pressed a button and said, Of course. Please follow me. We have a few others taking exams today, but since you're here on sponsorship, we'll push your case ahead so you won't have to wait long." After a while, they reached this hallway. People were discussing Altho, perhaps because he was being prioritized for the exam. They were curious about his identity. "Let's go," said Altho's parents' friend. They heard a knock on the door. "Come in," the man inside called out. The girl bowed to the A-ranked adventurer, Jasmine. "I have a request. Would you sponsor this gentleman for an A-ranked exam, please? I'm quite familiar with you, Miss Jasmine," she continued. "Please wait outside." The man asked Jasmine, "How have you been lately? I met you not long ago, but somehow." Upon hearing this, Altho tightened his grip on his hand. The man continued, "It's truly an honor to meet both of you. My name is Caspian Bladewart, and I'm the manager here. Normally, there's a registration form to fill out, requiring a mana core before participating in live combat. However, because of Miss Jasmine here, I'll sponsor you through those steps. It seems your parent's friend is a reputable person, so because she's vouching for you, you've received this favor. Do you think Jasmine's family is really that special? The gentleman continued. You only need to do a doubles match with one of our examiners. Feel free to use any weapon you like. You seem to be either a martial artist or an enhancer. Becoming an adventurer doesn't require a surname, but because you have such a close relationship with Miss Jasmine, I can call you. Although hesitated for a while, recalling the sight of the mask he was wearing on his face. It had sent him half a note on the sheet music. He replied, just call me Note. They then shook hands. Through that handshake, it seemed like the two of them felt something unexpected about this power. Is this power really strong? Whose power is it? Perhaps this was a well-kept secret. Note was very pleased to meet him. Mary led the two to the examination hall. This way, please, she said. As they walked away, both the man and Althal turned back, looking at each other in a way that was hard to describe. Jasmine's family was mentioned, seeming quite respected. Althal wondered if that was why she wanted to go with him, but she seemed quite annoyed when someone mentioned her father. Althal followed behind, admiring her in this direction. This way, please, Mr. Note and Miss Jasmine, said the man. This path will lead you straight to the promotion floor, where the exams take place. Pay attention and proceed straight up the stairs to take your seats. When your name is called, a bright door opened, dazzling the two as they walked through. They were met with two men competing against each other, surrounded by quite a few spectators. The match was extremely dramatic and captivating. The slender man managed to evade most of the opponent's attacks. Even the bald-headed man had to admit the other's talent, but he thought the opponent wouldn't be able to evade his strike, known as the death blow. Although Althal was heading to his seat, he didn't miss out on the thrilling match unfolding. Note silently wondered why one would announce their moves to the opponent, similar to how spellcasters intone their incantations to focus their resources. Many enhancers also announce the names of their techniques aloud, a practice frowned upon by some. A loud call rang out. A technique. The slender man retaliated against the bald-headed man. The bald man questioned how the slender man could manage it. The slender man replied nonchalantly, well, it's a matter of knowing your strengths. Even the elderly can twirl a walking stick better than you twirl your staff. You're too focused on physical strength rather than enhancing mana, neglecting the balance of techniques. It's quite predictable and laughable. Despite being 35, you're still at the novice stage. I've completed 100 push-ups, sit-ups, and kicks. The bald man retorted defensively. The slender man acknowledged his efforts, but noted his unfortunate facial bruising, which affected his evaluation. Despite this, due to Note's fire element, the slender man upgraded his assessment from E to D rank. Defeated, the bald man walked away towards the next person, Diane Whitehall. Before he could finish his greeting, a girl fell to the ground, claiming a twisted ankle, revealing her underwear. The unconscious men around showed no sympathy, but instead joked about how attractive her grandmother's underwear looked. Some even suggested she should just be assigned an E rank to save time. Meanwhile, from afar, Note observed a young man who seemed quite strong. What was it that made Note sense his strength just from a glance? Was his intuition correct? The girl who fell stood up and shouted to Diane Whitehall, I'm 18, a novice stage water element mage. A girl in a cap standing nearby spoke friendly words, saying they already knew about her and advising her to prepare her weapon. She assured the girl that they had medical staff and mages on hand to treat any injuries right there on the examination floor. The polite girl, Jasmine, turned to Althal and explained, once a mage reaches the novice stage, they discover their elemental affinity instead of trying to master all 4 elements. Focusing on a specific element enhances efficiency. Although recalled hearing that mages focusing on 2 or more elements faced stricter and more accurate evaluations during exams to determine if they truly specialized beyond 2 elements. The girl in the cap raised her voice, addressing Diane Whitehall. Let's see what you've got, Miss Whitehall. Pure water energy. Protect me. Jasmine reasoned that mages, unlike body enhancers who use mana for physical augmentation, are trained rigorously to create defensive shields right from the start of combat. Although found this discussion intriguing, the examiner used incantations to intercept Diane's attacks, even within her defensive barriers. The exam was tense, with Diane continuously demonstrating her skills for the examiner to assess her abilities and efforts. Her determination and skill impressed everyone, turning water into a misty explosion that even caused the examiner to remark, "Your control is quite good," and her final spell sequence was well structured. Diane's adept mana manipulation earned her a grade C, a notable achievement at her age. Next up was Ija Knight, but before he could proceed, a surprising incident unfolded. The slender young man had been informed about another person's case. He was rated as a grade B risk-taker, leaving everyone astonished and questioning why he didn't need an exam. Meanwhile, someone with glasses watched from the shadows, their four eyes meeting in silent communication, despite the crowd's doubts and curiosity. Next in line was Lucas Wykes, finally arriving. Why not skip over and consider him for grade A? Although pondered aloud, the examiner introduced Lucas Wykes, an 11-year-old novice stage mage specializing in fire elements. Although was also surprised that someone so young, only 11 years old, had already reached the novice fire core stage. Truly, he was strong, as evidenced by Altho's earlier observation. Because of his young age and talent, he seemed arrogant, which the examiner noticed from his demeanor. "Enough boasting, my protector," exclaimed the slender examiner. The petite figure expressed her thoughts. "He presents himself as a fire guardian, mature and steadfast. It seems we have a special talent here, as expected from a member of the Wykes family." The examiner in the cap noted, "It seems you are not only full of fighting spirit, young man from Wykes, but that arrogance shows you still need to learn humility." Observing his next move, a calculated step from the examiner, the fire guardian would naturally disappear when his limited air supply in the tomb ran out. "You're too late, Madam Examiner," retorted the arrogant young man. "I've heard no examiner has been injured while examining risk-takers. Well, it seems I'll allow you to be the first." The examiner unleashed a series of cunning strikes to teach him a lesson about his arrogance and self-satisfaction. Yet it seemed he hadn't experienced failure. He continued to retaliate, but shortly after, he was defeated by the examiner. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Wykes," the examiner acknowledged. "Your rare mana quantity and ability to learn difficult fire spells have shown your potential." The young boy shouted defiantly, "This isn't over yet. The exam isn't finished." The examiner and the slender figure suddenly rushed forward, causing the young man to become very angry and shout loudly, "How dare you interrupt my exam?" The calm examiner replied, "You were the one violating the rules," and unexpectedly chanted a spell. Even though the examiner had announced the end of the test, the infuriated young man retorted, "You incompetent examiner. That item was the one that prevented me from getting hit by the next blow. While blocking the missiles, it was you who caused the exam to end, while I still controlled everything." This arrogant young man still did not know fear and didn't regard anyone else. The slender examiner said, "You freely defend your actions. Now, Ija Knight, announce his results." As I said earlier, his mana quantity and control ability were excellent, despite remaining inexperienced. "We think he is capable of ranking B." The people around congratulated the young man, saying he had done very well and should be proud of achieving a B rank. He did not thank them and said, "Don't compare me to you, useless monkey. It's natural for me to rank B." He was resentful, and the fools should wait until his father knew about this. It seemed that his family was quite authoritative, and with his father's pampering, he didn't care about anyone. Finally, the one we have been waiting for has arrived. Jasmine also wished Altho good luck as he stepped forward and thought, "It's good for you to approach this type of warrior like this. You and I have had years of training and experience with the sword and those suspicious, sharp movements, but also very secretive in defense." The slender examiner urged, "Hurry up. We don't have all day." Altho stepped up and bowed. "Examiner, it seems you are a special case because I have no information about you to see what you are." The examiner blushed. "I don't know what this sudden pressure is." When Altho had just drawn his sword, someone spoke up, "Examiner at." The young man sitting beside the examiner and the examination observer were both bewildered, not understanding what was happening. "Step down, George. I will be the one to examine this candidate," said the person assertively. You personally want to examine this candidate." The examiner and the observer both expressed surprise. "I apologize for my rudeness, sir. But does someone ranked AA like yourself need to examine a candidate, especially someone of your stature. The examiner George hesitated. I am wondering how much power I should use to make the examiner George feel comfortable. You've given me reason, the man responded. I have no doubt about your abilities, George. I just feel I should examine this candidate because of your sponsor, with whom I am familiar. This shouldn't be a problem, should it? Turning to the man, Note's presence alone could make other candidates hold their breath and sweat profusely. The man standing in front of him wasn't just the largest guild manager in Sapin, but also a grade AA adventurer. Although noticed that he did not expose any weaknesses, and the pressure from his bloodlust was truly overwhelming, as if he had no intention of conducting a normal examination. So why are you so excited about this? At pointed his sword at him, then instructed him to be ready and not to let this special treatment bother him. Although prepared himself and began the examination, but after a few attacks, he realized that the man was too fast and easily knocked him to the ground. However, calming himself down, he quickly dodged a few of his attacks. After dodging those attacks, he did not disappoint our expectations and responded. This caused him to receive a scratch on his nose. He didn't feel upset or painful about the wound, but he felt great. It's really hard to understand. The two were drawn into a dramatic examination, and what would happen next was painful. A wound appeared on his face, and he received several blows. The more they fought, the more disadvantageous it became for him. So how would he turn the tide of this battle? The opportunities were still immature, and he was shorter than his opponent by 30 centimeters. Although he was familiar with using a sword, his body had become stiffer after merging with Sylvia's dragon will. But he was still weaker than a former combatant whose body had been reinforced and covered with a thick layer of mana, even after extensive training. He still wasn't entirely accustomed to this underdeveloped body. The man unexpectedly apologized for underestimating him after a period of friendly competition. I should take this more seriously. At that moment, his body urged him to move and escape, but the man showed no intention of stopping. Then he assumed that Jasmine had found someone worthy. At this point, he sensed very fast bullets of wind approaching, so close that their trajectories were almost predictable. Having anticipated the trajectories of these wind bullets, if he wanted a chance to retaliate, he needed to narrow the distance. After a few movements, he was close enough to strike back. This surprised both examiners and Jasmine. The man remarked that he was a fire mage and continued to engage. The outcome was already declining. He was an AA-ranked adventurer capable of using long-range incantations that made many fire mages wary. So why was he worried? No, he couldn't be arrogant. The intense battle made Jasmine worry. She stood up. Although Altho couldn't stand steady, the man had already grabbed him too far away for Altho to counterattack. The man was impressed with At's persistence and grew stronger with each spell. He pressured him to turn the cards in his favor. Caspian had previously looked closely at the piston stum skill, but this self-created incantation truly shone when used at close range. The old man realized he was about to lose, which couldn't happen. He roared fiercely, frightening everyone. Jasmine also stood up, drawing two swords from her waist, ready to support Altho. Although at this moment he felt it was all over. There are two schools of thought for light magic, external and internal. While books say that internal light magic is too difficult for wizards, because it only increases strength slightly, he disagreed. With his enhanced speed and reflexes, he should be able to dodge everything, hopefully. He overdid it for a moment when trying to test his limits. Apologies. It seems like he was determined to hide his true abilities until the very end. He can only assume he wanted to be ranked low. Note, all the contestants were talking about him. Like, did you see that? Or, he's a real monster. The examiner asked, although if he was sure he didn't find him annoying. Although nodded in agreement to that question. Ms. Jasmine immediately ran down as the match ended. She came to Altho's side, asking if he was okay. Then checked the notification orb just now. It was the last test of the day. Please go to the front desk to receive your adventurer card. Everyone dismissed. After checking on Altho, he walked towards his office, sat down at his familiar desk. Thinking about the recent duel with Ace, then sighed. His body now seemed to be soaked in exhaustion. Two examiners walked in, opening the large door. Sir, please explain what happened. Close the door first, and they carefully closed it. Sir, what is going on today? There are more B-rank adventurers today than there have been in the past 4 months. And not to mention, all three look like kids. To reach light yellow rank at just 11 years old is unprecedented in human history. Sir, the two examiners said angrily. He raised his hand, signaling them to stop, and said, "Do you remember what happened 6 months ago in Cyrus?" "Oh, the first tournament between the 3 races. Right. That's right. Most of the staff from the adventurers' guilds weren't notified, but I received a notification a few weeks ago that the ban on elves and dwarves becoming adventurers under the royal decree of Sapin had been lifted. Today's matches featured some contestants representing that change. So you mean all 3 of them are either elves or dwarves?" Lucas Wykes is half-elf. He has long been a resident of Sapin. His birth information is hidden, but it's likely he was born to an elven slave. The Wykes family has a notorious reputation for using dubious methods to produce exceptional heirs for their family. Nevertheless, he is an anomaly, being highly compatible with the fire element despite his elven blood. He awakened at the age of 8, which is quite early even by elven standards, and was forced to become an adventurer to hone his abilities through real combat. It seems his family has pushed his development to the limit using mana cores and various elixirs. Ijon Knight, on the other hand, is a mystery. His background is concealed, but he was raised by dwarves from a young age. He was sent as one of the representatives from the Dwarven Kingdom to integrate with the human kingdom. But why was he granted B rank without having to take the test? The boy only awakened a few months ago and is still at the dark red stage. However, his abilities have been verified, and his sponsor is someone I couldn't refuse. I'm also curious about his capabilities. As for the masked enhancer today, honestly, I don't know who Note is, but I can be sure that he doesn't represent any noble elven or dwarven family. I'm just a bit curious about the kind of person Ms. Jasmine would want to sponsor. Jasmine, from the Worth family? The examiners were taken aback upon hearing about that family. It made sense, given that the family was renowned for producing and training the kingdom's most powerful fire mages. So that's why he's so proficient with fire magic, one examiner remarked. The information I've just shared with you will soon be made public. However, I trust that you won't spread it around until the official announcement is released, the head examiner added. After discussing, the two examiners left, leaving him alone, contemplating the masked enhancer. The boy's fire magic was unusual, but extremely effective. But you're mistaken, George. It's his technique that makes him a beast, although some of his movements seemed awkward, as if he still wasn't accustomed to his own body. I can't imagine how formidable he'll become once he matures. With the ban lifted, elves and dwarves wouldn't be the only ones able to become adventurers. They could also be students. The continent had undoubtedly entered a new and exciting era. In another scene, a beautiful girl with long hair sighed in frustration. She thought about the figure of a boy, likely although she felt she should be happy that he had reunited and spent joyous times with his family. But who was she, and was although treating her too well? The girl imagined a scene where although was close to another girl. The girl said, "It's all thanks to you," and although gently responded, "Thank you. Everything is going very well." Thinking about it made her furious, calling them cunning. Although was my friend first. She regretted not treating him better before. She should have been kinder to him when he was still here. But it was all Althoug's fault for treating her like a child. What a fool he was. A man suddenly opened the door and called out, "My dear, I have good news for you." He found his granddaughter once again absorbed in her orb, not paying attention to his words. "Grandpa, what did I tell you about knocking?" she scolded. Her grandfather laughed and said, "I would be very happy if Altho could become my grandson-in-law. But isn't it a bit too early for that?" His granddaughter reacted to his statement with disgust. "That's gross, Grandpa." "Don't be mad," he said. "I have some good news for you, my dear." "I'm listening," she replied. "What if I told you that you might have the chance to attend the same school as Altho?" "Really? Is that true, Grandpa? You're not lying, are you? Can I really go to school with Altho?" Her granddaughter kept asking excitedly. Her mother stepped in. "Calm down, Tessia." "Yes, Grandpa. I've been acquainted with the principal of Cyrus Academy for a long time. That cunning old fox kept boasting about finding 4 enhancers who could use all 4 elements, while I was the one who taught the boy. I wasn't happy about that at all. But things are a bit more complicated. Instead of just sending you to school." Her mother asked if she remembered the Continental Tournament. That was just the beginning. "We're still negotiating the terms of integrating young elves and dwarves with humans at Cyrus Academy. The principal told me that although has decided to become an adventurer for 3 years. So if everything goes well, by the time he joins Tyrus Academy, you'll be in your final year. So train well with me first. After all, this will be the start of a new generation. Back to all those perspective, Jasmine worriedly asked him, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Actually, I'm quite happy," he replied. "By the way, are you close with that person, Ms. Jasmine?" "Well, not exactly. I'm quite familiar with people in the Adventurers Guild, and he is one of them." Sir Note. Jasmine tugged at his sleeve and said, "Go on." Note. Once again, people around were talking and bombarding him with questions. Maybe he's just a little short, or is he really just a kid? And is that kid crazy? Aldo walked over to the beautiful lady, and she thanked him for waiting. She had just heard the announcement about the result of the simulated duel. "Sir Note," she said, pulling out something and continuing, "on behalf of the Adventurers Guilds across the country of Sapin, I would like to congratulate and welcome you." Aldo took it and saw that it was a golden card. Another voice called out, "Note." It was the novices, smiling and congratulating him. Jasmine placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "You might be new, but now you're an adventurer, part of us." She held up the golden card that only he now possessed. He looked at the card in his hand, and now he had become an adventurer under the name Note. He had freed himself from the confines of the name Aldo. But today's match had indeed made him realize a few things. He had spent too much time adjusting and getting used to the new magic system of this world, the beast of Sylvia homing his elemental power. He had been so engrossed in the abilities he gained upon arriving in this world that he neglected his training, which he had excelled at before. In the past, he had utilized his limited resources to polish even the simplest techniques. But in this world, his limits were non-existent. So should he continue pursuing magic, or... He accidentally bumped into someone. "Excuse me," he said. The person he bumped into was one of today's contestants, who was also rank B without meeting a test. "No problem," the boy replied. "So another arrogant kid ranked B, huh? Do you two know each other, or is there a B-rank adventurers meeting I wasn't informed about?" he said arrogantly. Aldo responded, "What, are you going to throw a tantrum if there is?" The boy remained haughty. "Don't get cocky, just because you're ranked the same as me. Even within the same rank, there are different levels, and you commoners are the lowest. Never forget that," he said before walking away. Aldo thought to himself that this side character was full of empty words and shallow. Jasmine asked, "What happened?" "Nothing." Aldo replied, "I was just talking to him before he left." "So, what's next?" Jasmine asked. "Do you want to go to the mission board, or do you have something in mind already?" "With your skills, that would just be a waste of time. So I plan to do something else," she replied. And she led him into the enchanted forest. Upon arriving at the gate, the guard outside said, "You need a permit to enter." The two presented their papers to the guard, and she asked him, "Do you need to bring anything before we go?" Although quickly replied, "I've packed the essentials for the week ahead." "All right then, let's go," she said, stepping through the gate. Beyond the gate was a magnificent scene, with incredibly fresh air and animals showing off their beauty, adding color to the forest. "This is the enchanted forest," she said calmly. "Seems quite peaceful, doesn't it, Miss Jasmine? We're at an outpost at the foot of the Grand Mountain Range. Most areas around here have already been explored. Lower-level adventurers use this area for training and gathering materials from the creature's secretions, which are used extensively in healing potions and remedies." As Aldo walked by, he noticed a young man struggling with a task. He kindly asked if she should help him, but because it was his task, she protected him to let him do it himself. Sylvie seemed to notice something and immediately jumped onto her shoulder. Aldo thought it had just eaten a creature to become stronger. It must be excited with all this wild mana around here. Seeing Aldo observing Sylvie intently, she asked if he wanted to follow her. He thought it would be fine on its own, as he could still sense it through their bond. She then said, "This enchanted forest has denser mana layers, so your connection with Sylvie will expand further. Let's move quickly to our first resting point. It will take us a whole day, and it will be more dangerous as it gets dark. Try to keep up." It must be a feeling that every parent experiences when they see their child leaving home for school for the first time. He remembered when he and Sylvie were about to leave home. He reminded Sylvie to be careful, then he set off. He was exhausted and took off his mask, lying down on a quiet grassy field. If not for the mana transport skills Sylvie had taught him, he wouldn't have been able to keep up. Although it was in the early stages of pale red core, despite some adjustments she had made to herself, it was quite impressive. She thought they would stop and rest a few times, and people had already lit fires to warm themselves. But she still hadn't seen her Covenant beast return. Is it still okay? Sylvie is still updating, although on its situation. It seems quite happy. It must have been uncomfortable being indoors all day, she thought. Meanwhile, although eagerly flipped through a book, saying it must be really enjoying itself. Miss Jasmine, why do you want to become an adventurer? She remained silent, her expression grave. Or did you hit a sore spot with that question? After a long while, Jasmine hesitated before speaking softly. I want to escape my family. Upon hearing her response, although affirmed, you're right, Jasmine continued. My family, one of the most dedicated in the campaign against the demon race, boasts many powerful wizards and enhancementists. Our lineage ranks first in fire magic prowess, and they take great pride in it, as fire is believed to be one of the strongest elements. When I awakened earlier than all my siblings, my parents had high hopes for me. But when all tests showed I wasn't suited to fire magic, my family saw me as excess baggage. It was foolish, although gripped her hand tightly and growled, to think that mana cores have different levels of strength. But that's completely arbitrary and illogical. When wizards themselves create a hierarchical system based on magical elements, no element is superior to another. It entirely depends on how the wizard applies it. Although share her perspective. Jasmine burst into laughter. I'm sorry, I'm just used to seeing you calm every day, so it was quite surprising to see you so angry. Maybe you're upset thinking about your past life. Which was your only weakness then? The amount of ki you had, similar to this world's mana cores, when my ki was lower than normal. But in this world, with a magical element and a deep golden core at just 24 years old, Jasmine is still shunned by her family. But it's just so unfair. Whether it's enhancementists versus wizards or elements against each other, Jasmine has long accepted that people always find ways to make themselves superior. It's natural. Beside this, the Two Horns group has been very kind to her. Even laughing loudly or smiling for the first time, Jasmine always remains withdrawn and fragile. The two of them extinguished the fire and settled into a small mattress, each had brought along to rest. Although thought back and realized that she might have been a bit forceful, insisting on becoming your bodyguard. She wasn't friendly or outgoing, nor was she the most knowledgeable person in the Two Horns group. We should have asked for your opinion first, she said. I'm quite sensitive, you know. You shouldn't tease adults. But I was quite happy that you volunteered. Miss Jasmine, you aren't hesitant to point out when I make mistakes, and I think I need that, especially when I sometimes go overboard. But we really should sleep now. It's really strange talking to you. It doesn't feel like I'm talking to a child, she noted. Then they fell asleep. The next morning, Altho was woken up by an animal. You're too heavy. Don't sit on me. Half asleep, she saw an ugly-looking creature on top of her and shooed it away. Funny joke, kid. Good morning, Miss Jasmine. Why didn't you wake me up to help? I tried, but you didn't budge. Sorry, this bad habit of mine still needs to be fixed. If you're up, then have breakfast and check if your pet is coming with us. She cheerfully said, Sylvie, let's have breakfast. I've already had it. I think it has too, but it's disgusting. So where are we going now? Actually, part of the reason I brought you here is for a duel. A duel. I noticed your fighting style seems awkward at times, like you know exactly what to do, but your body doesn't obey. He thought her idea was good, but how you plan to duel? I need to know your physical limits before going to any dungeons or taking any missions. So let's limit the use of mana and only use it to enhance your blade. I understand. Use the other sword. He was surprised to hear her say that. How did you know it's a sword? Well, a person like you wouldn't carry a wooden stick everywhere for no reason. So, are we doing it here? Follow me, she said as he drew his sword. She was also surprised it was a sword. Are you ready? How long has it been since you fought without enhancing your body? The battle with Miss Jasmine only confirmed the fear he had since the fight with Caspian. While he was almost obsessed with honing this new and wondrous magic, he had become complacent with his swordsmanship skills. Since arriving in this world, his magical abilities had become a crutch, something he relied on too much. It simply masked his limitations and shortcomings. After a period of sparring, she had already won. Although your physical strength is weak, and your body movements are somewhat awkward. However, those precious skills of yours have salvaged the situation. Furthermore, your intuition and reflexes are formidable, even frightening. Thank you, but I know you're being lenient with me. See? That intuition is scary, but you will gradually become stronger through missions and dungeons, even when using magic. And when I become a master swordsman. That will take a long time. You're already ahead by a few years in terms of using mana. Now you should focus on swordsmanship without using mana. You want to explore dungeons without using mana. Even with that experience, it takes decades for warriors to completely master swordsmanship. I know you're good, but it takes just 2 years. In a bustling and noisy tavern, someone said, "Hey, has anyone heard the rumors? If you're talking about that famous masked swordsman, it's all just nonsense. None of it is true." No, it is. A friend of mine once teamed up with him. He was with Jasmine, and he's quite short, so you can't miss him. Why would your so-called friend say anything about him? I think the rumors are true. He's not just a high-skilled mage. If he's not a mage, then all the rumors are exaggerated. Have you heard the stories about him? Some say he cleared an entire dungeon by himself. How could that be possible? Even mages can't do that, not even in a low-level dungeon. And you expect me to believe a normal swordsman can do it? Maybe sometimes you shouldn't completely dismiss things. Remember, Jasmine is with him. Just bring him here, and I'll defeat him for everyone to see. Where's my drink? According to some, he was Jasmine's disciple. But those assumptions were wrong. The most peculiar story was that not only did he receive a B rank during his initial evaluation, but he recently advanced to an A rank. If that were true, he achieved a rank in just 2 years of being an adventurer. Furthermore, it's understandable why Tumen would be furious. Even he was once a former B rank mage. The masked swordsman was like a significant blemish on his pride. Suddenly, a masked man entered through the door, and all eyes turned to him. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. Isn't that the little swordsman everyone's been buzzing about? That's the masked swordsman we've been discussing. The main cause of all these wild rumors in the flesh. What are you doing here? He was sternly asked. Where's your little bodyguard? She's off duty. You brat, are you ignoring me? Just because you're recently famous for those ridiculous rumors, you think you're better than me. Seeing this, everyone in the tavern urged him to calm down, reminding him he couldn't kill anyone here. Ignoring their words, he drew his sword and swung at Althal. The first strike astonished him. Was it because Althal dodged, or because he missed? He was furious and continued slashing at Althal. But each of his strikes was evaded. All you do is dodge, huh? He taunted. Just as he finished speaking, Althal countered, severing 4 of his fingers, which fell to the ground. In pain, he yelled, "How dare you!" Those witnessing the scene turned pale, not knowing what kind of pressure they were under. Are we done? Although said before turning to leave, someone quickly brought a bag of ice. We can still reattach them with a healing mage's help, they said. Althal approached the barmaid and said, There's a bag of supplies under the name note. Trembling, she stammered, Yes, I'll get it for you right away. After getting what you wanted, Althal left the tavern. Outside, Ms. Jasmine asked, Why did it take so long? Although hid the recent fight and casually said, The barmaid took a while to find the stuff. However, Jasmine wasn't fooled as she noticed a bloodstain on the mask. Although removed the mask and said, No one was seriously hurt. They then continued their journey on horseback. Although took the opportunity to write a letter to his parents. Dear Mom and Dad, by the time you read this letter, I will probably be in a dungeon. I know I haven't been visiting often lately, so please be patient with me a little longer. Can you believe it's been 2 years already? I still can't believe that Lilia has awakened. Her father must be incredibly excited. But let's not let him get too carried away and hire a tutor for Lilia just yet. Let her train on her own before joining Cyrus. Thinking about her becoming my senior is something else. By the way, Jasmine and I are doing well. I've gotten stronger since the last time, especially after beating Dad in an arm wrestling match, and I've just suddenly advanced past the light orange stage. Jasmine is still helping me adjust and teaching me everything she knows about wind magic. In return, I'm teaching her some better sword techniques. As promised, this will be my last adventure before I start school. In a few weeks, I'll see you all soon. Love you all. Are you done with your letter? Jasmine asked. The stable owner assured, I'll send the letter as soon as the horses return. I've enchanted them to find their way back to the stable, so don't worry. She's right, Jasmine said. Let's have them wait for us outside the dungeon. This is pretty dangerous, Alval noted. The group clearing the dungeon is probably waiting for us. Will Sylvie join us? She's still communicating with me to send more detailed messages, but she refuses to meet until she's ready. I don't quite understand, Alval said. Maybe she wants to become as strong as possible before you start school. Now let's focus on our mission. We should hurry. After traveling a bit further, they arrived at their destination. Everyone was there, waiting. Here comes the arrogant kid again, someone remarked. Looks like we're about to have another enchanter. It's that brat again, Alval muttered, feeling frustrated at the sight of him. So you two are the last to register. It's nice to be with you both. Let me introduce you to the group. Then the dual-powered man with Althal shook hands. Through the handshake, he felt it was a strong one. He guessed some rumors about the masked swordsman were true. His name was Reginald Bastion, an A-rank enhancement mage with a deep gold core elemental. He turned to the arrogant kid, suggesting that it seemed like the two of you already knew Lucas Wykes. He's an A-rank mage specializing in fire elements with a deep gold core. Over there is Creole Masser, an enhancement mage of the water element. He'll be our tank, and he is the B-rank contestant from before. What's his name again? He replied, an emitter, an A-rank mage with a deep orange core specializing in earth elements. As for me, I'm Olympic, an A-rank mage in the deep gold stage, specializing in healing. Although Althal sounds arrogant, he's quite safe with a healing specialty in the group. It's my turn. My name is Samantha Tempest. I'm an A-rank mage in the deep gold stage, specializing in water elements. I've heard a lot about the masked swordsman. Protect yourself. And this is Brawled Landon. Nice to meet you both. I just arrived at AA rank, a pale gold enhancement mage specializing in fire elements. Today, I'll be the team captain. Shouldn't you two introduce yourselves? He looked towards Althal and Miss Jasmine, a pale gold AA rank enhancement mage specializing in wind elements. He was pleased to have another AA rank in the group. On note, a pale camellia enhancement mage specializing in fire elements. You heard that she didn't have any other elements. Althal quietly thought it was all fake news. He not only has a full set, but also hasn't used magic for a while. For personal reasons, the blonde girl understood. I see that you two still have luggage. Don't you have a space ring, Lucas? You asked Olympic not to ask me. I'm full. I'm waiting for her, so I still have mine. Lucas is sure that an emitter also has a spatial ring and thanks to ancient magic left behind by his mentor for making a floating city. Even a ring of small space is worth a few thousand gold coins. Lucas asked, Is that enough, Althal? Yes, I think so, Althal replied. Thank you. It seems like everyone is ready to go then, Althal continued. Let's move in together. They can reach the first level of the underworld. Stay alert, Althal cautioned. We haven't encountered any strange creatures yet. But soon after, they heard noises that caught everyone's attention. A person shouted loudly as a demon bent down and formed a line. Together, they defeated them using their individual methods, being careful not to waste mana and physical strength. However, the arrogant kid didn't listen. He decided to use a firestorm to eliminate the fallen demon horde on his own. The team captain was furious, grabbing him by the collar. Didn't you hear what I said? Don't waste mana on them like that. It's unnecessary. The kid retorted, refusing to admit fault. I ended them quickly, so everyone could save mana. Move quickly, the captain urged, before they catch up and attack us again. This dungeon was known for its mysterious creatures that escaped the clutches of death. There was no way to completely eradicate them without a mana core for risky ventures. Thus, feudal battles continued endlessly. The cruel tomb, the captain explained, is where I marked the entrance the first time I found it. This was the reason Althal and Miss Jasmine had come to this cruel dungeon again. An emitter helped me set up a few points of support, the captain added. With everyone supporting each other, they moved on to the next level. This might be their last visit here, as the captain could only reach the first level. The mystery of what lay on the final level remained. But I'm sure, the captain concluded, the artifacts allowing those fallen demons to regenerate must be there. A man suggested confidently, as long as he has some gold, He'll be fine after dividing and selling anything down there. All right then, the captain said. Let's go, everyone. Keep moving forward on this path. It seems like something is blocking the girl. Seeing this, Altho rushed forward, drawing his sword and striking it once. Everyone turned their heads in surprise. What's this? We weren't warned about traps here, someone said. The captain replied, there weren't any traps here before. Are you all right? Do you need help with your injuries? The girl assured them she was fine and looked towards Althol. Althol observed the thing he had just struck and clarified. This isn't a trap, it's a mana creature. Stay alert, everyone. They proceeded cautiously to their destination. But something felt off. I don't remember it being like this last time, someone remarked. You're right. It's not this lingering heat, it's a surge of pressure. Another noticed, soul-shattering from within. They didn't know what would happen next. Suddenly, there was a loud noise, and something monstrous seemed to appear. These mana creatures weren't here last time. Why are they appearing now? Someone questioned. After a new mana creature emerged in a dungeon, they asked, is this okay? Several people stepped up to attack, but it seemed the creature wasn't targeting them. Should we ignore that earthworm digging holes, or should we go for the artifacts? Someone pondered. Samantha, stand close to me, the captain commanded. I'll protect you. It might not be a good idea for others, but I'll protect you. Samantha thought it wasn't a good idea, seeing him stand so close to that earthworm. The captain shouted loudly, turning back immediately. We need to know what's happening here before going any deeper. Lucas, invoke a heat shield immediately. Although instructed. Though not understanding what was going on, Lucas complied. And you, invoke a water barrier. Altho continued, ending their maneuvers. Altho picked up a green stone. Replace this stone in your staff, he said to the girl. It will make it stronger. The girl agreed and took it, although then told everyone to get out of there. The captain agreed with Note's suggestion. We need to escape from here before any more explosions occur. Let's go. But to escape from there, they have to kill the earthworm. They all agreed. But the animitter's incantation didn't make it crack. Jasmine and I will lead it away from Note and Lucas. Regina said, aiming for a gap between its eyes. If that doesn't make it fall, at least it will create an opportunity for Note and Lucas to attack. They quickly proceeded with the plan to defeat it. Lucas himself was feeling fearful. The usual elemental incantations weren't enough to injure the giant worm. Does that mean your incantations need to be hotter? Jasmine said, now is the perfect time to attack, and it seemed the worm was attempting to flee. Jasmine did very well in temporarily helping everyone stay safe. Let's move quickly before more difficulties arise, someone said as they stepped forward. Just as Lucas was speaking, the large worm seemed afraid, and a loud noise rang out. Although believed the worm didn't intend to kill them, it was merely delaying them until the next explosion. They were all on the defensive, but Lucas seemed to be in danger. Although threw himself forward to save Lucas, but he didn't need Althal's help and pushed him away. No, the girl screamed to keep her safe. Brawl used his body as a shield to get her out of danger, but now he was in danger himself. Altho urged them to hold on to him tightly, and one of them took out some sandwiches, saying, eat a bit, it'll make you feel better. These are special sandwiches I've saved for each dungeon exploration trip. Altho thanked him for the sandwich he offered, saying the best way to eat it was to lightly toast the inside just enough for the cheese to melt. Then he handed over his own sandwich, smiling, and asked Altho to help him. He asked if the sandwich was good, and Altho agreed it was very tasty. Maybe it's because your fiancé personally created the recipe, both the meat roasting and the seasoning. He felt very fortunate, and please send my thanks to her for this delicious meal. He promised to do so with a bright smile. Someone spoke up, stop this nonsense right now. Did I say wrong? The only reason I joined you is because the leader is an experienced AA class mage. Now the leader is not only a dwarf, but we also lost the injured person. After listening to him, he became angry. Are you complaining after you dropped the gun, like an idiot, and had to ask Note to save it? How did I control the situation? Unlike me, a person who can't protect himself, I had to protect Samantha. A job I didn't have to do if you were vigilant and responded on time to create a barrier. If you did, we wouldn't have fallen into such a situation. Enough. All those shouted loudly. Stop pretending to be crazy. Lucas. Lucas was puzzled. A new enhancement wizard has just reached the orange core. Is it a golden core or a silver core? Or are you already a god? Now you're just a burden. After Althal's words for Lucas, everyone felt extremely satisfied. Now I will treat my wounds and rest a little, my friend Brauld. You need to make a decision before we continue, the captain said. Reginald is a bit burned, like the wounds can be treated. All of us can continue. But what about you? You need to decide for yourself. Brauld made the decision to continue. It may be my last dungeon exploration, so I will make it to what I have decided. He fought with one hand and was injured, but I am still an AA class enhancement wizard. I will not be able to help you all. But I think Note should get up and direct everyone. He always thought he was the most comprehensive in everything, even when facing unexpected situations. He is very talented. Hearing this, Altho looked around and sighed, taking on the responsibility. We'll rest for an hour before continuing, he said. Brauld doesn't understand that even this place is different. This tunnel is not blocked. But why is it? After talking, he stepped up and took his weapon, continually breaking the block, but it seems he didn't. Jasmine stepped in and said to him, "Try again." After a struggle, it broke, and the blue light shone in their eyes. What is this? There is no pillar support at all, so why doesn't it collapse? The girl is fascinated by the beauty in front of her. One suggested that they rest before continuing. However, I have a little sleep, although asked if I wanted to rest. But we won't stop because there's something strange here. Be careful. I don't hear anything, and I don't see anything suspicious outside the grass. There's something that makes Althal feel restless. But what did he miss? Clara is really a real sister. Oh, are you okay, my friend? You know she hasn't died yet, but Clara is waiting. He came right here. Damn it, stop that danger. Jasmine thinks this fog is causing hallucinations. That's why Althal feels uncomfortable. He instructed everyone to stand close together. This mist is creating illusions for us. Samantha finished creating a barrier and asked, "Who is Clara?" A man answered, "She is my fiancée, but she can't be alive. She died in a dungeon. I witnessed it myself. We cremated her and buried her ashes. What we need to do now is find him." Lucas was irritated. Why is nothing going according to plan? You guys are really veteran risk-takers, Alvo asked Jasmine anxiously. Are you okay? Sorry, did you miss something in the illusion? She just saw something like that. But it's not the main thing. It's her father. He was spreading his arms and laughing at her. Alvo took her hand and said she would be fine. Now about this eerie fog. Do you have any incantations to clear them all out? Jasmine is not strong enough to clear them all, but she thinks she can create a path to find him. Samantha opened the barrier for Jasmine to chant a spell to create a path to find him. Everyone was surprised by where the vines suddenly appeared from. Moreover, they showed no signs of yielding to Jasmine's incantation. They're coming here. Lucas, no need for you to say. Lucas started chanting his spell to destroy the vines, but it was useless. It seemed not easy at all. Reginald protected the wizards while they prepared stronger incantations. They gathered together to break through the encirclement. And so, they united their efforts and hearts to advance. Although speculated, could these vines be fire-resistant due to their humidity inside? He turned his head and called out to Brauld. He was excitedly rushing in to chop and talk. Do you think an AA-class enhancement wizard will lose to a few big vines? But his actions seemed too reckless. Looking over at Jasmine, as expected, she didn't need his help. Brauld encountered danger as the tree roots latched onto him. Without hesitation, Altho rushed in, like a gust of wind, to assist him in breaking free from the encirclement. Altho reminded him of earlier, this is supposed to be your last expedition. Are you planning to perish here? If not, then fight with reason. We still need you. Meanwhile, Lucas drank some kind of potion and began charging into battle, continuously chanting his incantations. At the same time, the adversaries noticed his weaker but very volatile incantation, spreading and catching fire. This showed that Lucas was still sharp amidst the hallucinatory fog, and Emitter carefully followed, reading his incantation and exerting all his strength to slam the ground, causing cracks to spread everywhere. Seeing his technique, Altho sensed that the vines would find it difficult to recover because of the cracked ground, causing the combustible material to flow everywhere. Combined with Samantha's incantation, they would have enough time to locate their teammates affected by the illusion. This was a useful incantation, often used to collect water from the surrounding environment. It worked unexpectedly well when she decided to use an incantation designed for daily activities. In this case, she did very well, but only for a short time. The massive vines quickly revived. Everything they had tried so far became futile. Now it seemed that because of their incantations, the vines were absorbing the mist. They needed to quickly come up with a plan to deal with these vines. But perhaps it was too late. The vines had combined together, forming a monstrous beast several times their size. They were astonished, facing an S-class monster they had only read about in books, never encountered in real life. Brauld seemed to be losing his mind, muttering, "It seems like the gods don't want us to survive." Thinking so, he recklessly charged in to attack it. But everyone knew it was dangerous for him to do so. Before he could reach it, another man was grabbed by the monster. In front of everyone, he was killed. Witnessing this, the man's anger and resentment surged. He wielded a giant hammer that had been dormant in his hands, determined to destroy it and avenge his fallen comrade. Althal didn't want to lose another teammate. He quickly ran towards the man who was being held back and told them not to fight that monster. But before he could finish, he was thrown far away, crashing into a rock. It was his longtime companion who had been with him from the beginning. Seeing this, Jasmine was deeply worried and called out his name loudly. Quickly regaining his resolve, Althal instructed Animiter to protect the man. Upon hearing Althal, Animiter immediately rushed out to support the man, afraid it wouldn't be enough. Althal was charging forward when a hand pulled him back. Turning around, he saw it was Jasmine who had grabbed his hand, telling him they needed to quickly retreat from this place. Although asked about the others, but before Jasmine could reply, he turned and saw his friend assisting the man, who was bleeding badly. He quickly reassured her that he had promised his family to protect the boy safely. Jasmine gently comforted him that they would leave, but not now. They couldn't abandon them. After saying this, he turned away, leaving her feeling helpless about what to do. The battle between the monster and the man continued fiercely, accompanied by screams and the sounds of heavy blows. Then, 3 young men rushed in to support the man. They took the opportunity to rescue others from this fierce place. First was Althal, who led a girl out and instructed Animiter to shield Jasmine until she reached Brauld's position. Then, they ran quickly towards the exit, but not according to plan. Everyone was stunned when the man was wrapped around by the monster, although instructed Lucas to burn the vines around him. But unfortunately, they were thrown far away and fell to the ground. Brauld encountered danger as the tree roots latched onto him. Without hesitation, Althal rushed in like a gust of wind to assist him in breaking free from the encirclement. Althal reminded him of earlier, "This is supposed to be your last expedition. Are you planning to perish here? If not, then fight with reason. We still need you." Meanwhile, Lucas drank some kind of potion and began charging into battle, continuously chanting his incantations. At the same time, the adversaries noticed his weaker but very volatile incantation, spreading and catching fire. This showed that Lucas was still sharp amidst the hallucinatory fog. Animiter carefully followed, reading his incantation and exerting all his strength to slam the ground, causing cracks to spread everywhere. Seeing his technique, Althal sensed that the vines would find it difficult to recover because of the cracked ground, causing the combustible material to flow everywhere. Combined with Samantha's incantation, they would have enough time to locate their teammates affected by the illusion. This was a useful incantation, often used to collect water from the surrounding environment. It worked unexpectedly well when she decided to use an incantation designed for daily activities. In this case, she did very well, but only for a short time. The massive vines quickly revived. Everything they had tried so far became futile. Now it seemed that because of their incantations, the vines were absorbing the mist. They needed to quickly come up with a plan to deal with these vines. But perhaps it was too late. The vines had combined together, forming a monstrous beast several times their size. They were astonished, facing an S-class monster they had only read about in books, never encountered in real life. Brauld seemed to be losing his mind, muttering, "It seems like the gods don't want us to survive." Thinking so, he recklessly charged in to attack it. But everyone knew it was dangerous for him to do so. Before he could reach it, another man was grabbed by the monster. In front of everyone, he was killed. Witnessing this, the man's anger and resentment surged. He wielded a giant hammer that had been dormant in his hands, determined to destroy it and avenge his fallen comrade. Althal didn't want to lose another teammate. He quickly ran towards the man who was being held back and told them not to fight that monster. But before he could finish, he was thrown far away, crashing into a rock. It was his longtime companion who had been with him from the beginning. Seeing this, Jasmine was deeply worried and called out his name loudly. Quickly regaining his resolve, Althal instructed Animiter to protect the man. Upon hearing Althal, Animiter immediately rushed out to support the man, afraid it wouldn't be enough. Althal was charging forward when a hand pulled him back. Turning around, he saw it was Jasmine who had grabbed his hand, telling him they needed to quickly retreat from this place. Althal asked about the others, but before Jasmine could reply, he turned and saw his friend assisting the man, who was bleeding badly. He quickly reassured her that he had promised his family to protect the boy safely. Jasmine gently comforted him that they would leave, but not now. They couldn't abandon them. After saying this, he turned away, leaving her feeling helpless about what to do. The battle between the monster and the man continued fiercely, accompanied by screams and the sounds of heavy blows. Then, 3 young men rushed in to support the man. They took the opportunity to rescue others from this fierce place. First was Althal, who led a girl out and instructed Animiter to shield Jasmine until she reached Brawl's position. Then, they ran quickly towards the exit, but not according to plan. Everyone was stunned when the man was wrapped around by the monster, although instructed Lucas to burn the vines around him. But unfortunately, they were thrown far away and fell to the ground. Lucas felt deeply disappointed in himself. This isn't what I, from the powerful Wykes lineage, should be. One of the key families that led Sapin to victory over Alina. My duty is to survive and uphold the lineage, he thought, raising his sword to attack Althal, injuring Jasmine in the process. Immediately, Jasmine ran towards Althal, but Lucas threatened her to stay put. Ignoring Lucas' words, she still reached Althal, but before she could get to him, Lucas attacked her, causing her to be injured and thrown far away. Animiter was furious. Lucas laughed with a cruel smile. Don't act up unless you want to be blown away like that. What are you doing? Do you think I'll risk my life for you, Connors? Feel honored. You'll be forever remembered as heroes, brave souls who held off the monster long enough for me to escape. He laughed again as Animiter was caught next by the monster and thrown far away. Helpless, Animiter prepared to face the monster's attack. Suddenly, Brawl rushed in. Stop harassing these kids. Fight me instead. He charged like a rocket at the monster, striking a blow to its shoulder. This made him smile joyously. At the same time, Althal began to wake up behind them. It seemed he had no other choice. But would he survive the backlash when he used it? Not just something appeared on his arm, but down to his fingers. It was the awakening of Dragon Layer 2, his training at El Sano, leading to several breakthroughs that even surprised Varian. The first breakthrough was the first time he unlocked it, by tapping into Sylvie's innate skill, allowing him to temporarily separate himself from space. This layer's time was significantly limited, as it nearly drained his mana core and physical stamina. The second breakthrough, on the contrary, was something I couldn't have anticipated. It was what Varian had spent decades achieving, but he only took 2.5 years. The integrated layer. The beast seemed to sense its master. Come here, Sylvie, I'm fine here. Please be careful, Althal. Tell the monster it's time to play. I really can't blame Varian when he's doing it. He barely gave you a match when you just unlocked the integrated layer. You want to end this story and hope you'll survive the backlash. After a friendly match, he realized that although he could harness all the magic in the environment in this state, his body still couldn't withstand the spell. Come on, the beast continued to roar relentlessly. Although injured and seemingly exhausted, he pressed on. Meanwhile, in the city of Saris, a woman complained, "How can our 8-year-old daughter be so engrossed in playing that she fell asleep on the floor like this?" "I understand, Lilia," he responded. "Since her awakening, Ellie has been trying very hard to keep up." "I hope so," she replied. "She's always so eager to talk about your past." Suddenly, they paused because the ring on the woman's finger began to glow, signaling that their son was in danger. They were stunned, unable to believe what they were seeing, and thought perhaps the ring was malfunctioning. Back to Aldo, he was relieved to have regained consciousness. He was surprised to see his gloves shattered the stone. The other young man had taken the stone and used it to heal him. A green light emanated, spreading around his body, but the pain was too much, causing him to scream. In that moment, memories of everything that had happened flooded back. "Lucas," he muttered, struggling to get up. "Where is Jasmine?" The young man pointed towards her. She took Lucas's spell much harder. Her body wasn't fortified by mana. "I have a healing kit with me, so I treated some burns, but she might have internal injuries." Hearing this, although instructed him to use one of the stones from his gloves on her, after using it, she seemed to improve. He thought that with a few hours of rest, she would be fine. Although silently thanked the stones his mother gave him for saving both him and Jasmine. Since he was 4 years old, this was the first time he had been in such a situation. It was a nostalgic feeling. His beast was overjoyed to know its master had survived, but worried about him, and asked where he was. The beast had obediently moved away. "We're safe now," he said, "so focus on training. It's not important now." But he believed it was quite important. "Trust me, Sue, we're just resting now. Go do what you need to do. I'll see you later." While although was resting, the young man lightly tapped him and said, "Anyway, I didn't expect it. Note, the great masked swordsman, who went through the same trials as me at the same age." At that moment, although frantically touched his face and asked, "Where is my mask?" "Sorry, it seems to have fallen off during the battle. I looked for it but couldn't find it." "What about my sword? Did you see the black staff I usually carry?" "That's over there. I didn't know if it was valuable, but I kept it just in case." Although thanked the young man for saving him and Jasmine. "If not, I would be no different from that bastard Lucas." Although replied cheerfully, "Not really. I was quite curious why you stayed when the beast appeared. I saw Creole trying to take you away." Although laughed and responded, "How could a king abandon his people? And because I promised to cherish those around me, I made a promise to someone very important that I would become a better person." The young man laughed and said, "Although you talk like an old man, I'm curious, what kind of life have you lived to make such a promise?" "Sometimes I wonder that myself," although said. "How long was I unconscious? I'm not sure exactly, but probably more than a day. It seems we might be stuck here for a while, waiting for her to recover. Let's chat for a bit." He extended his hand and said, "My name is Although." The young man replied, "I'm a Lilia knight from the Kingdom of Dawn." Although knocked on the metal panel he was leaning against. "This thing doesn't look very natural, does it? Did you make this metal shelter?" Elijah scratched his head and said, "I just controlled it when the cave collapsed. I think the beast body is supporting the entire cave. Even if you're a rare type mage, you know the truth that one can only control existing metal, not create and control it. So, even if you were a dwarf." The young man lowered his head and laughed awkwardly. "How can I keep a secret anymore?" Although curiously said, "Tell me about it." The young man hesitated and then proposed, "Let's make a deal. I'll tell you if you also share what happened back then. Your hair turned completely white, and those glowing symbols appeared on your body. And your eyes. They shone purple." "All right, I'll tell you," Although replied. "First, you guessed right about one thing. Since being raised in the dwarf kingdom, I'm not sure about my origins. Jalan, the one who took care of me for so long, always avoided the topic of my parents. The only memories of my childhood are fleeting and give me headaches. But I still enjoyed a relatively peaceful life until I broke through to the deep orange core. After receiving this strange energy, I fainted. When I woke up, I was surrounded by numerous black metallic trees. Since then, the elder told me it was time to leave and explore the rest of Dickin, without explaining why. Everything happened so suddenly. But sometimes I feel like I have an itch I can't scratch. But I know it relates to Dickin's origins and my powers." While they were talking, suddenly the other person said, "This fish tastes bad, although the other one is better." Both of them were surprised for a moment and then burst into laughter. The young man apologized, saying he didn't mean to turn this conversation into an awkward emotional confession. Although reassured him, "Don't worry about it. So what about you? What's your story?" "I'm a reinforcement mage proficient in 4 elements, with 2 rare elements, ice and lightning," Although replied. The young man thought although was quite unusual, but he conceded, "All right, you win. But what about those strange color-changing symbols?" "Here, I'm also a beast tamer. What you saw was me unleashing my beast will," Although explained. "Beast will? Wait, how old are you?" "I turned 11 just a few months ago." The young man realized he was older, as he was almost 12. Wait, why are we even proud of this? Both laughed heartily. Look at your face, you weirdo, the young man teased. Suddenly, although winced in pain. Are you okay? The young man asked. I'm fine, although assured him. Right after that, Jasmine also woke up, although cheerfully said, You're awake. Jasmine immediately rushed over to hug him and apologized profusely. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. He gently patted her hair and said, It's okay, everything is fine now. I'm all right, Aunt Jasmine. She felt extremely guilty and exclaimed, It's not okay at all. I couldn't protect you. No, I'm the one who should apologize, although insisted. It was my stubbornness that dragged you into this mess. In his thoughts, he wondered if she had always been this small. She burst into tears and asked about his injuries. Elijah, you still have our bag, right? Yes, I do, he replied. In my bag, there's an emergency first aid kit. It should be enough for both of you. She used the first aid kit to bandage his wounds, although thanked them both, feeling much better because of their help. It's time to go home now, he said. The young man helped Aldo to his feet, and the three of them began to make their way outside. Wait, Aldo asked, Do you think anyone else survived? He replied, Reginald Bastion and Brawl Landon were absorbed by the beast in the previous battle, so I'm not sure. What about Samantha? Aldo inquired. I managed to create a metal shelter around her before we lost her. However, she was badly injured, and I don't know if she's still alive, the young man explained. Aldo wanted to find her among the rubble that didn't know where to start. Even the core of the beast was lost somewhere down there. When we were underground, it was impossible, but now I can try to find her, the young man said. He placed his hand on the ground, recited a spell, and slowly sensed her presence. I found her. Her heart is still beating. Let's go to her quickly. Aldo thought that skill could only scan the surface, wondering who this young man really was. They reached Samantha, and the young man was about to remove a branch entangled with her leg, but Aldo stopped him. Don't. That branch is keeping her leg stable. Removing it will only make the injury worse. Her heartbeat and breathing are quite stable, but this fever is troublesome. At least she's not in immediate danger, he assessed. Hopefully she's just unconscious, Jasmine said, lifting Samantha in her arms. Shall we go? Aldo realized it would be very difficult to find the beast's core in this chaos. It seemed that a priceless treasure would be buried here forever. Then there was a noise. The young man shouted in fear. What now? Aldo held his hand and said, It's okay, Jasmine. Don't tell me it's another sound, she replied. Everyone looked up. Dad, I'm here. I could see you. It looks like you've gained weight, haven't you? And you've grown taller too. It turned out to be Aldo's beast. The young man asked in surprise, Is that a beast? But it has 4 legs. Wait, it's not a dragon, is it? No way, Aldo calmly answered amidst the young man's barrage of questions. It's a dragon. Although don't look at me like I'm crazy, the young man said. This is my contracted beast, Sylvie. But they were supposed to be extinct for centuries, he exclaimed. That's why I need you to keep Sylvie a secret, Aldo said. The young man was amazed by everything. Aldo had, at 11 years old, he had control over 4 elements, 2 rare elements, and his contracted beast was a dragon. While still in shock, Aldo called him to climb onto the dragon's back to return home. On their way back, they encountered something. Its eyes were wide open. As they approached, Jasmine lunged forward to attack, but it turned away and fled. They were all puzzled by this. The young man wondered, although, with such an impressive contracted beast, why didn't you bring it along from the start? Before he could hear the answer, Samantha woke up. She praised Aldo for looking more handsome without the mask. Don't talk anymore. Save your strength, Aldo said. Wait, look at what I found. She slowly unwrapped a black cloth she was holding. Everyone was surprised. It was the beast's core and Aldo's mask. He praised her. You did great. He took his mask and said, As for the beast's core, we'll sell it when we get back and split the profit. Do you want it? She smiled and replied, You deserve it more. He turned to the young man. Don't look at me. I don't need it, the young man said. Do you know how much it's worth? You don't want it, Aldo asked. The girl handed the beast's core to Aldo and said, Thanks to you, I'm still alive. I think it's only fair that the person who killed the beast gets the reward. Aldo held the core in his hand and looked at everyone. Thank you, everyone. Samantha seemed to be getting weaker. Alal asked the two of them, "Can you go to the guild hall and find help? I'll stay here and watch over her." Before leaving, the young man left all those belongings behind just in case they needed them. Alal opened his bag, took out a piece of paper, and wrote a message to his family, informing them that he had recovered some of his mana and was currently safe. This way, they wouldn't worry too much until he got home. Alal asked his beast, "Did you grow this big by killing mana beasts and eating their cores?" "That's right, I've eaten a lot of mana beasts," it replied. "Can you still transform?" Alal asked. Hearing this, the beast transformed into a small black kitten, although joyfully patted its head. It would be a few hours before everyone returned. With the core in hand and his body's assimilation, he thought he might recover almost completely. At this moment, although once again thought about Lucas. Lucas was the son of a notorious noble family known for their unethical practices in creating powerful mages. Because of what Lucas had done, Brawl had died, and many were injured. To set things right, although needed to be cautious because, naturally, blood debts must be repaid in blood. After some time, people arrived to treat them. They all returned to a large house with a picturesque view. Alal sat on a long chair and bowed his head. Jasmine and the young man seemed to be recounting their experiences. Alal asked, "Is that enough?" He knew such cases were very rare, but they had explained everything thoroughly. The man agreed with Alal and said they could rest before the trial. Suddenly, there was a loud bang as the door opened, causing everyone to turn and see what was happening. Lucas walked in arrogantly and said, "So you all are still alive, huh?" Hearing this, Jasmine became furious and drew her sword. The young man joined her, saying, "How dare you?" But although stopped them, Lucas was shielded by two people's arms. He continued provocatively, "Why so tense with your comrades? I'm curious how you managed to escape that terrible beast. Did you sacrifice someone to save your own miserable lives?" Before he could say more, the man stood up in anger, slammed his hand on the table, and said loudly, "Lord Lucas, it would be best if you..." Ignoring the man's warning, Lucas continued, "So Samantha is crippled now, but she's still alive. Don't tell me you sacrificed that guy." Suddenly, his eyes turned purple, and he asked, "Master, your ear. What's wrong with your ear?" He reached up to his ear, surprised to find blood. "Blood? My ear," he exclaimed. Although Alal was now standing up and walking towards Lucas, the bodyguards were also ready to protect their young master. But suddenly, they couldn't understand why the atmosphere changed so strangely, why their bodies felt so heavy. Seeing Alal's approaching attitude, Lucas feared that the bodyguards wouldn't be able to protect him, and he shouted loudly, "What do you think I hired you for? Catching for me?" The bodyguards attacked together, but they were no match for him. He swiftly defeated all of them. He worried that Alal's actions would put him at a disadvantage before the court. Pointing his sword at him, he'd apologize, "Sorry, I slipped. Can I take that back?" His action made him shiver in fear. He asked the girl to take Mr. Lucas to the medical area for treatment. Alal asked, "Can the two of you wait outside for a moment?" He said, "Although I understand your feelings, Alal shouldn't provoke Mr. Lucas like that." Alal responded, "And why not? You have the ability to eliminate that bug while still keeping the individual's identity secret. Are you threatening me?" As he spoke, Alal stepped closer to him. "Do you think you are strong enough to protect him from me?" He was also frightened when he heard and saw Alal's eyes. Those eyes had seen countless massacres of both people and monsters to attain such sharpness. Sighing, he said, "I have no intention of threatening you. You may not believe it, but I do this for your benefit. Even if you kill Lucas, the Wykes family won't sit still. Because they can't find out your identity, they will not only take revenge on Jasmine but also on those associated with her, the Tying Group, both current and former members. Until you have enough power and authority to not only protect yourself, but also your loved ones, I advise you not to act too harshly with Lucas. And even if you have the power, slaughtering his family will be meaningless if you can't kill his half-brother." Alal replied, "I understand. Thank you. Now let's get to the reason why you wanted to speak with me privately." He sat down and continued, "You are a smart man. I'm sure helping someone like me isn't just a whim, but because of the Adventurers Guild, right?" He wondered if this young man's arrogance was simply self-confidence, and he answered, "As long as it's within our jurisdiction, I'm happy to assist you if needed." "Good, then I need something like this." After speaking, Alal went outside. As soon as he stepped out, the young man said, "You scared me. I thought you were going to kill Lucas right there." Alal replied, "Now is not the time." "So you plan to kill him then?" Alal placed his hand on the young man's shoulder and said, "I'm hungry. Sylvie is waiting outside, so let's fill our stomachs before the trial." They went out to eat, enjoying their meal and chatting together. The young man wondered why Alal still wore a mask while eating. And so, the trial day arrived. The man called out, "Everyone, stand up." The head of the trial spoke, after receiving the report, "On behalf of the Adventurers Guild and the Tribunal, I hereby declare that the Mage Lucas is officially stripped of his A-rank status for endangering and causing harm to his teammates during a dungeon expedition. Furthermore, he is banned from re-registering as an adventurer until the guild makes a new decision." The sound of the gavel in the judge's hand echoed. "Mr. Lucas, please hand over your adventurer's license." Although felt it was unfair, Lucas only received a light punishment when his crime was severe enough to warrant imprisonment. The judge called out, "Enchanter note," and thought to himself, "So this is the man capable of handling an S-rank mana monster on his own." Then he spoke, for showing hostility towards Lucas and potentially the Wykes family by attacking him. "On behalf of the Tribunal and the Adventurers Guild, I declare that Mr. Note is banned from entering Cyrus Strong City for the duration of Lucas's studies at Texaris Academy." The gavel struck again, indicating the final decision. However, after hearing this, Alal showed his disagreement. He said, "Sir, I object to this ruling. Why should I be punished for retaliating against Lucas's betrayal in the dungeon?" The judge replied, "This is a decision, not a discussion. We understand the circumstances, which is why we haven't revoked your license. You may continue to work as an adventurer as long as you stay away from Mr. Wykes and his family. That's the best we can do." Suddenly, Lucas shouted, "Wait!" He could easily take off his mask and sneak into the city, potentially harming me and my family. The girl beside the judge said, "We will confirm Mr. Note's identity right after this trial concludes. You will not learn his identity or that of his family. For reconciliation purposes, selected mages from the guild will monitor Mr. Note, whether he wears a mask or not." Lucas intended to protest, but the judge cut him off. "This is not up for debate, Mr. Lucas," he declared, ending the trial. Lucas walked out, visibly displeased. He turned to Alal and said, "You should know your place. It's best if you stay at least 5 cities away from me." Alal responded with disdain. "Running away while threatening others really makes you look pitiful, kid." Infuriated by Alal's words, Lucas could do nothing but leave with his bodyguards. As Alal was about to leave, he heard a voice calling, "Excuse me, Mr. Note, please follow me. I will guide you out of the building." "No need," the judge interjected. "I will escort him out through the back door." The two of them walked to a large library room. The judge carefully closed the door behind them. "Do you think our little performance was satisfactory, Mr. Note?" the judge asked. "It was quite adequate. Thank you for your cooperation." "No problem. It wouldn't have worked without you," Alal replied. The judge hoped Mr. Note would refrain from causing more trouble. "We can't hide Alal's family forever. But if you remain inactive, they won't take any action. I am much more cautious than I appear," Alal said. The judge walked over to the bookshelf and took out a book. "Perhaps in the future, we will need your assistance. I hope you won't forget what we did for you today." Alal acknowledged. "It seems the Adventurers Guild leader is quite resourceful. At least you know which side to choose. I will remember that." As Alal walked away, the judge thought to himself, "Caspian was right. He is indeed a terrifying individual." As Alal opened the door to step outside, he heard Sylvie's voice. She ran towards him, and with her were the young man and Jasmine, waiting for him. "Is everything settled? Can we go home now?" she asked. "Yes, it's all over. Let's go home," he replied. Together, they walked home with their companion beast. On a sunny afternoon as they walked, the young man asked, "Do you want to visit Samantha?" Alal replied, "I think it's best not to visit her too soon. Can you help me check on her?" Without hesitation, Jasmine agreed and said, "Of course." The young man, feeling a bit down, said, "I guess this is where we part ways, huh?" Although had forgotten that the young man didn't come from Sapin. Turning to him, he said, "If you don't have any plans, you can come stay with us before we start school." Surprised, the young man asked, School. I thought you didn't know what school was. Alval explained. It's a place where kids and teenagers are taught. The young man interrupted. Of course I know what school is. I just didn't plan on going. But I remember you mentioning why you're working so hard to climb the adventurer ranks, to make a name for yourself. If that's the case, going to the academy wouldn't hurt. He continued. Sorry, but I'm not going. How could I get into the best magic school on this continent? Even if I qualify, it would take a mountain of money and connections to get in. Confidently, Althal responded. Leave it to me. You just need to show up, and I'll handle the rest. The young man said, Can you not say it like that? Althal threw his arm around the young man's shoulder and told Jasmine, You go ahead. I need to take care of something. The young man, still resisting, said, I haven't agreed yet. Lucas is also enrolling at Cyrus Academy. Are you going to leave me alone with him? Unsure of what to study, the young man felt embarrassed but grateful for everything, which made both him and Jasmine smile. They walked a good distance, and Althal said, Show yourself. A man stepped out from behind a tree and said, It's good that you had them avoid this. Althal thanked him. Thank you for arranging the judge's help. I think Lucas won't suspect anything. The man was relieved that everything ended without further casualties. Although chillingly reminded him, someone already died. Don't forget that. Stammering, the man replied, Of course, my mistake. I didn't intend to cause trouble. I just wanted to give you a little gift. He threw a gift bag towards Althal. When Althal opened the bag, he found it filled with gold coins. He asked why. The man replied, I just want to provide you with some safety measures. Safety measures, huh? They won't be revealed as long as I don't use them. Althal mused. Now, the only potential issue is that Lucas saw Sylvie. Perhaps understanding its owner's concern, Sylvie transformed into another creature and asked, How about this? A ferret. Althal, curious, asked, Exactly how many forms can you take? Sylvie responded, I don't know, but I'm tired now. Good night, father. Althal realized that having a contract beast that could transform into a dragon was quite handy. He adjusted his clothes and put away his mask as he stepped through the outer gate. Walking into a bustling and noisy street, he opened the door to a shop. The shopkeeper, who was cleaning the glass, exclaimed, Kid, are you lost? Althal answered, My father came to buy a spatial ring that fits my thumb. The shopkeeper said, Listen, kid, those spatial rings are really expensive. Are you sure your father knows that? Althal apologized and asked, Is this enough? Showing the shopkeeper the bag of gold. The shopkeeper, delighted, thanked him. Thank you, kid. Come back anytime. Contrary to the shopkeeper's excitement, Althal felt a bit down as he had used almost all the gold to buy a spatial ring just large enough to store a sword and a monster core. Nevertheless, he thought that living a school life might be better. He got into a carriage and said, Please take me to the Helsty estate. Holding his mask, he pondered. It's been 2 years since I first wore this mask. Looking out the window, he wondered what it would be like to be a regular student. Upon arriving home, as he approached the house, he saw his younger sister waiting at the door. Hi, Ellie. Your big brother is home, he said. She ran up to him and hugged him tightly. Welcome home, brother. Surprised, he asked. What? She repeated. I said welcome home, big brother. It's good to be home. Now, let me go inside, he said. But his sister wouldn't let go, afraid he might leave again. He reassured her, I'm not going anywhere. Hearing this, she let him go and said, All right, come inside. Her brother felt that his sister had grown up so fast. He imagined that soon she would be dating another man and leaving him behind. No, he thought, cutting off his own train of thought. All those parents happily came out to greet him. His father lifted him up and said, It seems not only your hair has grown. Your beard too, Dad. It looks messier than before. Were you trying to use it to hide your wrinkles? Although teased. His mother, standing next to them, ruffled his hair strongly and said, Hey, are you bad-mouthing my scruffy husband? She hugged him and whispered, I'll overlook the worry this time, her eyes tearing up. I'm so glad you're home safe. Although hugged his mother back and stammered, Thank you, Mom, and sorry for always making you worry. Ahem, a man interrupted the emotional atmosphere. I don't need to spoil the moment, but we also want to welcome the boy back. Everyone was happy to see him return safely. Seeing Altho looking around, his mother asked, Are you looking for someone? He felt like someone was missing, and then remembered, handing over a letter that Jasmine had left. She had to return to her group to carry out a mission. He felt regret for not being able to see her off. In her letter, she wrote, "Altho, please rest. Thank you. See you later." Altho thought she was quite dedicated. The man mentioned that they would return, and that the Two-in-Horns group was persistent like flies. "Yes, I know Jasmine has left. What about?" Altho began. The woman said, "If you're looking for Lilia, she's not here. My daughter is." The man enthusiastically interrupted. "Our Lilia has started her studies at the Cyrus Academy. She enrolled last fall." Annoyed, the woman tugged at his hair and said, "Let me speak." Despite this, Altho thought it was great news. The woman continued, "It's all thanks to you, Altho. The family will always be grateful to you." She's right. We never imagined that after so many generations, a mage would be born into this family. "I'm not too sure about the debt part," Alval responded, "but I have something to ask you." His father stomped his foot and said, "If we know where everyone is, it's time to hear about your dungeon adventure." His mother, sitting beside him, chided, "You're such a child." Alval started to think about where to begin, and then began telling the story. Everyone was amazed by the tale. The man thought it was an incredible expedition and commented, "I used to think my annual taxes were the scariest thing. But an S-rank monster? You really fought and killed a mana beast, the kind that your parents used to scare me with when I was little." Turning to his father, Aldo asked, "Speaking of magic and monsters, what stage are you at, Dad?" "Well," his father replied, "I've been stuck at the deep orange knot since you left. No matter how much I meditate or filter mana, I can't break through." Aldo smiled and said, "That's amazing, Dad. Use this. I had to use a bit of it to heal, but there should be plenty left for you to break through." His father shook his head. "I can't. You risked your life to get it. I can't take it from you." "Alice." Aldo's mother interjected, "Our son brought back such a frightening gift. I don't even know how much an S-rank monster core is worth. Given the worry it caused me, this stone might not be worth it. But for me, his safety is priceless." Aldo insisted, "Dad, if you want to keep up with me, you have to use this. You can't let your son surpass you, right?" His father sighed, "Don't tell me you've reached the light orange stage." Everyone was astonished once again. "My God, that's incredible," his father said, holding the core tightly. "Don't cry when your old man beats you in our next sparring match." "How could I?" Althal replied. His mother sighed. "Oh Lord." Outside, the boy asked, "What's up with her?" Althal replied, "I recently got a little brother complex." Later, the boy went to take a bath. While he was relaxing, Alva walked in without knocking. "I brought some." Before he could finish, the boy quickly covered himself. "Hey, I'm not wearing anything." "Calm down, princess," Alva said. "With all this steam, I can't see anything anyway." "Are you sure?" the boy asked suspiciously. "Not really," Alva replied nonchalantly as he left the room. Back in his own room, Alva opened a drawer and picked up a mask. He said to Sylvie, "A lot has happened in these past 2 years, hasn't it?" Sylvie replied, "And now I'm taller than you, Dad." Her response made Alpha laugh. "That's right." The boy, fresh from his bath, walked out and gruffly said, "Your turn." "Got it," Alpha replied. The boy asked why Alpha took so long. "Because I had to ask Uncle Vincent for a favor. I also talked to him about sponsoring your admission to Cyrus Academy." The boy, overjoyed, took off his glasses and asked, "Really? What did he say?" "Of course," Alval said, closing the door behind him, and leaving the boy hanging about what Uncle Vincent's answer was. Night fell. The young man lay on the bed, filled with joy. It was unbelievable that he was about to become a student at Cyrus Academy. He turned to Althal and asked what they would study there. "Cyrus Academy has always been the best school of magic," Althal replied confidently. "We'll surpass even the first-year students there. That might make things a bit dull for us, but I'm not worried." The young man still felt excited, but he thought about the powerful family students at the academy. Just imagining the knowledge exchange and learning to control his own power made him thrilled. Althal pondered. Perhaps learning a bit of ice and lightning magic would be useful. Lightning magic drains too much mana, and even activating dragon Will is difficult for me. Controlling ice might pose a challenge. Have you thought about what you'll do with Lucas? The young man asked. Althal sighed. Lucas doesn't know who I am. Until I have enough power to deal with his entire family, I'll keep things this way. Training right now is the most important thing for you to do. The young man was surprised. Can you really restrain yourself from provoking that pig? I'm also surprised that the first thing you want to do before bed is discuss this. Althal chuckled. Do you mean this pillow barrier between us? Of course, the young man replied. Two guys sleeping in the same bed is quite odd. Althal shifted towards the young man and joked. Do you want me to be a girl? But about girls, the young man said seriously. Do you think I could find a girlfriend at Cyrus Academy? Althal teased. With your serious prince-like appearance, you're worried about such mundane things? Don't worry, you'll meet a beautiful four-eyed girl with black hair. You two will get married and have cute four-eyed, glasses-wearing kids. Whoa, no newborn wears glasses right away, the young man chuckled. But I'm sure there will be plenty of girls around for you to envy. Envy that I can sense. Althal laughed. But don't worry, my four-eyed friend. Girls our age are just children to me. Now let's sleep. Good night. And with that, both drifted off to sleep. In the morning, Althal yawned as he descended the stairs and met Uncle Vincent. You woke up early today, Uncle said. Yesterday, you mentioned wanting to meet an inventor, so this morning I helped you contact someone. Oh really? His name is Gideon. Not only is he a famous researcher, but also one of the best inventors and a major supplier in Sapin. He'll be back in Exara City in 3 days, so we can visit him before joining the group. The central square seems fine, but what's happening in the city center that day? The young man asked. It's an important announcement from the Sapin royal family, Elsano and down, to be broadcast in Eton Square, Uncle explained. Do you understand? Yes, I do. Thank you so much for arranging this meeting. The young man replied gratefully. But are you curious about what I need from him? Not that I need anything, but I want to discuss a few things with him. The young man added quietly, I think it's time to use some knowledge from past lives. What are you dressed up for? Is everything okay? Uncle teased. I thought you had a morning date. That's right, I have to go now. Uncle, thanks for picking me up later, Althal said. Look after yourself and don't fall, the old man said. Speaking of old age, how's your training going? Haha. Your old man has officially broken through to the deep green stage, Althal chuckled. But I don't understand why. Even after absorbing everything from this monster core, it hasn't cracked. Anyway, I have to prepare before leaving. Thanks again, son. Do you feel strange why it hasn't cracked? Althal asked. Have you sensed the will of the monster inside? A source of power that craves, offering its most powerful and unique spells. Althal pondered boldly. What if you merge the two monsters together? Is that feasible? There's only one way to find out, Althal replied, concentrating. But I almost missed it. Your dragons will almost faded away, absorbed by the will of the other monster. But why couldn't I absorb this will? You almost forgot, Althal explained. The element of the monster and the appropriate element of the mage must be compatible. Remember, if that's the case, then you already know who we give this core to. And have you thought about her figure? Althal wondered. I wonder how she's doing lately. As you continue training, you also want to ensure time for your family, Althal noted. Every day passed like an ordinary boy, a fresh morning. Little sister had already opened the door to step into the good morning. Two mothers told me to go downstairs for breakfast, Althal's new voice. But I want a fancy space ring, the little girl continued. Mother said we should prepare for today's announcement, said two beloved. Wake up, say. Then she got up and jumped on her brother. Althal said she was too big for this trick. She laughed, asking if he was saying she was fat. Althal hugged his stomach and said, What did they teach you at that ladies' school? So get ready downstairs and have breakfast. Mother and her sister will be out with the housekeeper first. What a violent girl, said the boy guest. Prepare and have breakfast. They dressed neatly. Then he went up with Mr. Vincent to the city center. After a long journey, they finally arrived. Get off the car. Althal said you still said. The boy said, Sylvie has taken almost all of your breakfast, and so you are hungry is a common thing. Hey, I'm going to see some stores over here. Althal asked if you had money to buy it. Unlike someone, I always save money from the expedition. Fortunately, Sylvie is going with him. I'll go eat Gideon. Yes, sir. Then it jumped on its neck. Together, he passed through the store with the boy. Then Mr. Vincent and Althal went to his house. Mr. Vincent knocked on the door. Knock knock, a terrifying face has appeared over the counter. Small door and owner Gideon. There is no house. Let the two grandchildren fear. But when he realized that the person had a door, it was Mr. Vincent. He immediately changed his attitude and behavior. Hello, Vin, please come this way. As soon as he walked in, although smelled what it was, he said he should ask. Is something that smells not like that? Although said something was coming here. When he knew who was leading someone to Mr. Gideon, he yelled loudly. I said I didn't let anyone in. But when he realized it was Vincent, he said it was you. It seems like you're bothering me again, Vincent. He acts like I haven't called you back about this. It's just that lately I've been a little tired of meeting someone else. I have had dozens of letters from Royal all year round. They just screamed at me about a method. Moving a long distance across the sea, Altho asked, go through the sea. Why is he angry? He said angrily, what's wrong with this boy? Make you surprised. Mr. Vincent just laughed before saying that. Suddenly, he interrupted. Who is this rascal? Although politely bowed. It's an honor to meet you, Sir Vincent. Uncle Vincent had already told them a lot of great things about him and his great career. My name is Althal. He turned to Uncle Vincent, asking why he brought him here. You know I don't accept students or disciples. But in fact, I also want to know why the kid wants to come here. Althal laughed and answered their two questions. I came with a proposal, but he said he needed a way to move a long distance across the sea, right? He didn't hear it clearly, then asked again. Although noticed a green roll of paper, he thought it might be easier to understand if he showed him, rather than explain. Neither of them understood what he was doing. He stepped forward, but the problem we are facing is not something that a kid has not grown up with. Although said, of course, a machine that does not use mana but water vapor is created from outside materials. He wondered. He never thought of that. He looked at the paper, then said, wait, he said it wasn't enough. He was missing something. Althal recovered and said he had skipped some important details. He would be pleased to hand it over once we finished negotiations. Pointing to Althal, he said, me is not a simple child. No problem. He waved to call him to bring something. He said, I am sure, even all the bits and pieces that roll around in this place, enough to excite kids. He just opened it and said, use those bare green eyes to see here. Uncle Vincent, surprised, said, it's a diamond. To tell you that the kid is a new wizard. It's one of the most valuable stones on the continent, and may contain 5 times more mana than its size. It's great, but not too important to him. No problem. He turned to say, he took everything from the middle shelf. See, he carried everything, he said. Uncle Vincent was also fascinated by those things. He said, I haven't shown these to anyone, but the kid will be an exception. This mirror can distort space up to 5 times and still not interest me. He froze and dropped the mirror to the ground. He quickly picked it up for fear of breaking it. But not this one. He wouldn't be able to refuse this one. It's still not okay. This one is definitely. Uncle Vincent stood there and commented, indeed, Altho is the one who can keep calm in front of Gideon. Famous, but he shouted, take it all and call Altho the owner. What is happening in front of Uncle Vincent here? He said it seemed like there was no other choice. He took out that necklace. But the owner, that's how he made us know. Yes, yes. Sir, I've given the most famous designers to work with these masterpieces, so they will be suitable for the royal family. Although held it up and realized it was made from an earth dragon phoenix. Of course, that's right. Wait, how did the kid know? Uncle Vincent dumbfounded the earth dragon phoenix. He wondered what it was. They are a Class S mana strain. They are as rare as dragons. They are famous for their unique abilities to preserve their lives. I guess you found a way to harness that ability into this thread. Correctly beautiful. Like when an earth phoenix protects itself when danger arises. A protective shield will be created around the wearer. That's not the best part. If the user's shield is broken, the amount of mana stored in the thread will be absorbed and it will transport the user to a safe location. They know the way of Phoenix does that. One person can use this effect a few times. Honestly, kid, it's hard to say. I wasted 5. The core is a rare earth phoenix, no matter what S-class core. I guess they can use it twice. Can the mother and Ellie wait? Sir, you said earlier that they were made for the royal family. The royal family. Those who have contributed to this core. He scratched his head. But they're not important. I just want to know. How did the kid get these ideas? And why did he announce it here? And at this time, what does the kid want? Althal replied, I just want a special birthday gift for my little sister, sir. Besides that, I'm not planning to reveal anything, unless I know what you intend to use it for. Is that necessary? So, the kid will find out after today's announcement. Uncle Vincent retorted, I'm sure someone as important as you will have more information than a public announcement tailored for the occasion. That's enough, let's spill everything. Does the kid still need both necklaces? I'm not so generous. Althal ignited a small flame in his hand, intending to burn the paper, showing that he wanted both necklaces. Uncle Vincent muttered in astonishment. I may not know what's happening inside that extraordinary set, but I can trust that Althal always keeps his word. He scratched his head and said, Okay then, regardless of the royal family, completing the ship is still more important. 5 years ago, we found evidence that there exists another continent beyond Dickin. Upon hearing this, Althal was surprised. Uncle Vincent calmly confirmed, Yes, that's true. Althal asked, Did you already know this? Uncle Vincent put his hand in his pocket, pulled out a black handkerchief, wiped the sweat off his face, and said, A royal servant disclosed that he was uncertain and made me swear not to tell anyone else about this. But now that Gideon has confirmed it, we believe it to be true. Althal pondered quietly for a moment and then asked, So why are you so sure about this? Do you have any evidence to prove it? Uncle Vincent chuckled and replied, Of course we do. We're not half-witted scientists who dare to say such things without evidence. He walked over to a chair and sat down, continuing, A few years ago, we found an artifact attached to a mana beast that looked like a bird, a species never seen before on Dickin. It has the ability to camouflage almost perfectly with its surroundings. Uncle Vincent looked extremely surprised and asked, A mana beast with camouflage and flight capabilities. How did you capture it? He answered casually, Just pure luck. Some ordinary daredevil was shooting at a squirrel and accidentally hit the bird. Anyway, it turned out to be a complex artifact attached to it that we couldn't figure out what it did until last year. The matter has been confirmed. Although asked, What did it do then? The people with authority over this information are the royal family, right? In that case, I guess the designs on this drawing are even more important, because I'm sure the royal family doesn't know about them. Uncle Vincent immediately said, That artifact has the ability to record audio and images. It captured the conversation between Althal and Gideon. Uncle Vincent realized, Even great Dickin is powerless before Althal. Ha! Althal asked, Is that all, old man? Uncle Vincent burst into laughter and said, That's the gist of it. Althal looked puzzled and said, I don't understand. What do you mean by that? Uncle Vincent replied, Are there no inventors on Dickin who could create such a thing? You said you would introduce me to one of the most famous inventors and creators. You know, but you're a very skilled inventor yourself. You're the greatest inventor in Dickin's history. Althal skeptically asked, Is that true? Hearing this, the inventor Gideon felt genuinely hurt. He stood up and said, Of course it's true. Bring any inventor on this continent here, and they'll have to kneel down in admiration until their foreheads touch the ground. Althal laughed and said, That's why. Because the supposed greatest inventor of Dickin couldn't figure out the technology behind that artifact. The royal family believed that there was an inventor who created it somewhere outside Dickin. He looked completely bewildered and asked, Do I need to emphasize that? Adding to the fact that those artifacts contain moving images of all three kingdoms, Althal assured, I understand now. I understand. That's enough. He continued, We're talking about the possibility of the existence of a hell full of incredibly skilled inventors and possibly even more powerful sorcerers. I understand the seriousness of that, Lord Gideon. But imagine what those abilities could be used for. Althal picked up a pen from under the table, raised it, and said to the steam engine, We'll just have to wait and see what secrets this new continent is holding. Uncle Vincent and Althal left. Uncle Vincent said, I've never seen old Gideon so excited and interested like that before. When you mentioned that earlier while drawing, you said, This steam engine will need certain specific ingredients, which it might find rather. He chuckled. Old Gideon not only didn't care, but was ecstatic. He told you to draw it all out. Gideon commented that your idea was very sophisticated, but he still couldn't fathom how steam could generate enough energy to move such a large ship over vast distances. He speculated that people in this world had become too reliant on mana so they were quite surprised by the unconventional technological advancements of magic. Even more surprising to him were your parents. Altho replied confidently, I don't feel surprised or overwhelmed by what I can achieve. If I were my parents, despite Uncle Vincent's words, I would look at my own hands and think the same. Only then could I use this harmless technology to earn some useful things for my family. But if there really is another continent beyond Dickaden, then this is just the beginning. Alvo added thoughtfully. The messenger reported that the small eyeglass and the son are heading toward their father with big eyeglasses, and we saw the two of them. Uncle Vincent continued, I can't believe your sister's birthday is coming up next week. The boy saw two people and waved to them. Then the three of them walked together on the road. Althal pondered if this union might be related to the discovery of the new continent, as Mr. Gideon mentioned. Uncle Vincent said, I know what's about to happen, but I won't reveal it. The boy has discovered something. All three of them looked in that direction. They saw a man being beaten by a crowd. He had fallen down and was holding his body, saying, Please, I didn't do anything. Another man loudly asked, Didn't do anything? Just being the dwarf in the Exorus Academy is bad enough, and you dare to go against the Academy's rules by defending yourself with mana. Don't you know that using mana outside the campus is prohibited? The man on the ground, in pain, looked up at the crowd and stammered, But. The angry man raised his stick and shouted, I said, Release your mana. Seeing this injustice, the young man accompanying Althal rushed over, pushed the angry man away, and said enough. Then he worriedly asked the young man lying on the ground, Are you okay? Can you stand? The man who had been pushed by the young man angrily said, Unbelievable. How dare you do that? The young man shouted in the angry man's face, How dare you do this? Before he could finish his sentence, the angry man slapped him hard, knocking off his glasses. The angry man said, I think you should ask yourself that question. How dare you interrupt my fun? Even Uncle Vincent wouldn't tolerate your actions. Uncle Vincent, unable to accept what the angry man was doing, said, I'll call the guards before anything else. Although he held Vincent's hand to stop him and said, Don't. We can't let them. The young man thought if he used magic here, Altho and Uncle Vincent would be in big trouble. He calmed himself, determined not to lose control. The angry man noticed the insignia on the young man's shirt and said, Isn't this the symbol of the dwarf kingdom? The young man replied, You're right. The angry man grabbed the young man's hair and said, How interesting. Do you want to crawl like a pig with your brothers? Damn it, if I don't use mana, I can't beat him. Holding the young man's hair with one hand and raising the other, the angry man said, Open your eyes and watch. I'll make sure you all end up in the same hospital room. But before he could do anything, Altho broke the stick with a wooden rod, surprising the angry man, who turned around and said, Another commoner. Get lost before you share their fate. The man who came with him said, I won't play with you anymore. Altho replied, That's good because I'm in the mood too.